Your Majesty. Melania and I are deeply grateful to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. The phrase special relationship, seen from American eyes, the word special does not begin to do it justice. We're joined by history and fate, and by love and language. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
Security remains the cornerstone of this special relationship. We have the deepest, most advanced defense relationship in the world.
As I said last night, the bond between our countries is like no other anywhere in the world. The United States and the United Kingdom have done more good on this planet than any two nations in human history.
We are working together to end the humanitarian catastrophe in the Middle East.
The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with President Putin, but...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning, happy Friday. The weekend is about to begin and I hope you get to have a little bit of time off. Perhaps you're working this weekend and I'm sorry if you are, but for the rest of you, cool your heels, punish your liver and celebrate Britain. I'm going to be with you until 1 o'clock as per usual, and oh my goodness, what a day it was yesterday. I loved it. I've been kept very busy by Donald Trump this week, doing lots of bits and bobs. I've got so many stories to tell, but what about that press conference? They started doing all the scripted bit, didn't they? All the pleasantries, all the protocol, all the rehearsed lines, the deals that have been dealt, the things they've agreed on, the special relationship, the economic partnership in tech and in defence. And it was like, OK, well, this is nice. Oh, look, they get along. What beautiful bonhomie. And then came the questions. And I think we all knew when it was going to turn into ad hoc Trump that things were going to be said. And at times it really did look like Sir Keir Starmer was having an enema. Oh, I really love to watch it. I mean, call it Schadenfreude, but he was squirming, wasn't he? I mean, Donald Trump, a big man of stature anyway, compared to the rather vertically challenged Sir Starmer. But he stood there at the podium, leering down, looking at Keir, going, "You got a problem? You got a problem with migration in this country?" I told him. And Starmer was just sort of squirming, half smiling, jittering. You could see his little robot brain, you know, the wires becoming unfurled and steam coming out of his ears and the machine starting to glitch and twitch. Well, Donald just sort of leered at him, that big orange face. Oh my gosh, I loved every second of it. That gorgeous covfefe. I don't know if you remember that word. Beautiful Trump vernacular from back when things got a bit mad. And he put on Twitter in capital letters, and he went, "I'm going to go for a covfefe." And there was some weird sort of, it was on the, it was during the Capitol Hill riots. And there was a covfefe called, and it was outside some sort of adult store or something. Anyway, I remember those days. Trump always keeps us entertained, doesn't he? And he didn't let us down during the state visit. We are, of course, going to be mopping up all of the top lines from that, and I'll see if I can give you some inside analysis as well to some of the things I was hearing. I got to dine with some very senior politicians from America over the past week, and I've learnt a thing or two. Chatham House rules, so I've got to be careful what I say from the people I did speak to, but I will try and do my best to get you in on the act, because we're all mates together right here at Talk. Anyway, thank you for tuning in, you lovely, discerning patriots, and I'd love to hear from you as well throughout the course of the show. You can call up at any time. Today we've got the wonderful James ready to listen to what you have to say and register your interest. We like to call him Oxford because he's incredibly intelligent. He's a genius. He looks like a lovely adult Harry Potter as well. He's a charming, handsome and erudite young man. So ladies, get in the queue. 03444991000 is the number to call. It's your normal network rate. I can see him blushing. You know I do this to Alicia all the time. I say she's gorgeous and phone her up, and she's gotten used to it now. But James is in the hot seat today, so it's his first time to turn a little bit pink. Right. Normal network rate 03444991000 is the number to call. You can also send me a WhatsApp on that number, or indeed leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. Again, you know I love a good old voiceo. 8722 is if you want to text me. That's a bit old school, but we still accept it. But in order for it to reach us here in our little suite of science, you have to write the word talk before you write your message. We're also on X at talkTV. OK, hold your nose. We don't want to blow up your sinuses. Let's jump straight in at the deep end. We're joined by Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Oh, Tom, did you just love that press conference yesterday? Did you love it?
I mean, it's never short on entertainment, is it, when Donald Trump comes to town? And what a contrast between the two of them, not just in the style and the politics, but you've got an American president who loves the media questions, who loves the spotlight, and you've got a British Prime Minister who's under the cosh and is just squirming at every single question. So, I mean, it was so fascinating in terms of the contrast, so entertaining, because, you know, Donald Trump is the kind of walking, talking embodiment of all of the issues that Keir Starmer refuses to deal with or is incapable of dealing with. So what a remarkable spectacle that was yesterday.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've got a Donald Trump, a president who loves the spotlight, loves the camera. We've also got in the American president, a man who loves Great Britain, loves its people, cares about this country, which I am not sure Sir Keir Starmer did. And to be honest, the thing for me, the most sort of divergent aspect of that press conference is Sir Keir Starmer, Donald Trump basically saying, you've got to curb migration, you've got to stand up for your country, you've got to cut your energy bills, you've got to try and become energy self-sufficient and use the natural resources you've got. And Sir Keir Starmer's response was always, we've got to do it together with Europe. And I just thought, you know, that age-old question of where is Britain? Is it Atlanticist, or is it part of the EU, or is it the interlocutor between the both of them? And I think we both know, don't we, in which direction Sir Keir Starmer is minded to turn. Let's have a listen now to The Sun's political editor, Jack Elsom, asking Trump and Starmer about migration.
Legal migration is at record levels in Britain. The Prime Minister is trying to tackle that. What advice would you give to the man standing next to you on trying to stop illegal migration in Britain? I
told the Prime Minister I would stop it, and it doesn't matter if you call out the military, it doesn't matter what means you use, but it's going to destroys countries from within. And we're actually now removing a lot of the people that came into our country. It's a very hard chore. We were given a very, very bad hand. Millions of people came in from prisons and mental institutions. We have to remove them.
Jack, let me just deal with the question of returns, because this is obviously an issue we're taking incredibly seriously. We struck the returns arrangement with France, and notwithstanding the challenges to that scheme, which you've seen in the last few days, a flight went off at 6:15 this morning, successfully returning someone under that scheme. It can be done. It was done early this morning, so I can confirm that that flight went. It went successfully, and I'm pleased about that. Now we need to ramp that up at scale, which was always envisaged under the scheme, but it's very important that we have been able to prove that the proof of concept.
The proof of concept! The first flight, with just one single human being on it that was supposed to be deported, was blocked. The second flight was just some geezer from India going back to France to go back to India. There is no proof of concept. This whole migrant hokey-cokey, one in, one out, is never going to work.
I mean, even if it worked perfectly on its own terms, even if this scheme did everything they said they were going to achieve with it, it would still be effectively, 17 in, 1 out, because they've got capacity for about 50 deportations a week. This is like deportation theatre. It's just, as long as you can get a flight off, it will send the message that we're taking this seriously. But the problem is everyone can see through the act. Everyone can see that they haven't properly looked at the ECHR question. Everyone can see that this scheme in and of itself is going to be woefully insufficient as any kind of deterrent. And it's almost like the Prime Minister, not for the first time, is just trying to take us for mugs. Is trying to say, look, a flight has taken off, you're welcome. People aren't going to just take that at face value. People know that the issue is much bigger than this.
Yeah, and you know who else knows? America knows. I've spent a lot of time with Americans this week, and they know about our migrant crisis, and they know how weak Starmer is, and they're extremely worried for us. An interesting division, I think, between the two countries, and I think this has been in front of cameras hugely played down, curated, choreographed and managed, but the Americans are utterly spitting feathers over this. I can tell you that for free, is the fact that that this country is going to go ahead with the recognition of a Palestinian state. Let's actually hear what Trump and Starmer had to say about that. We're going to have to come back to that particular clip because it's got gobbled up by the system. Luke's there with his digital fishing rod trying to dredge it out of the depths. But let's talk about that before we see the clip, because it's a huge diversion in policy. America now sort of almost isolated when it comes to its alliance with Israel. France has buckled on this one. The UK has buckled on this one. I'm still of the sort of very basic mindset that if you turn around and you say, great, we're going to actually go ahead and recognise the Palestinian state, two things. Number one, you have actually rewarded terrorism. You know, whatever might have happened in the theatre of war, you have directly given a demand that Hamas was making and what they used to justify those appalling attacks back on October the 7th. But number two, there doesn't seem to be a two-way street. You know, if you ask people in Gaza, if you ask Hamas, do you recognise the state of Israel? They do not. They never will. So I just cannot see where the moral authority to do this is coming from.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. This is rewarding terrorism. This is rewarding October the 7th. Hamas's leaders have said as much, that this was essentially this would be the crowning achievement of what they disgustingly call the Operation Al-Aqsa flood. It is so obvious that the sequencing of this is a sort of moral outrage. And there's also just the practical questions, like who is going to be the leadership of this Palestinian state? Is it going to be Hamas? Is it going to be the Palestinian Authority, who haven't had an election in a long time and are, broadly speaking, quite hated in not only the West Bank, but obviously Gaza as well, seen as corrupt and crooked? And it's essentially the best thing you could say about it is that it's a virtue signal. But it's obviously so much worse than that. It's responding to the most lethal attack on Jews since the Holocaust by rewarding the very organisations who carried it out. And the fact that Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron cannot see that, I think really calls into question their judgment on all kinds of different issues.
Are you surprised, actually, at America's sort of softly approach to the UK on this? I mean, we're not privy to the conversations that have happened behind closed doors, the sort of negotiations that were taking place in Chequers. But were you surprised that America has sort of almost acquiesced to Europe's direction of travel on this geopolitical issue?
No, it is interesting. I mean, how much of this is down to personal relationships, down to the kind of horse trading that goes on behind closed doors is unclear. But it has been striking that ever since Starmer and Macron made this big move towards recognising a Palestinian state, you just have Trump essentially say, well, that's up to them, which is unusual for in terms of American foreign policy. So why this is, I'm not entirely sure. But what's quite clear is that America is remaining quite steadfast in its support for Israel. And really, broadly speaking, that is the key backer, isn't it, in terms of the kind of geopolitical support that it requires.
Yeah, I think as well, there's so much that happens in front of cameras in the public eye that contrasts to what's gone on behind the scenes. I mean, for instance, I have been sort of, it's been suggested to me by people who definitely know a thing or two that when the IDF struck Hamas in Qatar, the Qataris were probably informed, but because of their own theatre, their own audience, their own public and all of their neighbours, they have to go through the process of saying, this is terrible, you shouldn't have struck us. America has to go through the process of saying, oh, Israel, you shouldn't have actually fired a rocket into Doha, when actually the three of them probably coordinated over it. So it's interesting what America might be allowing Starmer to say in front of camera, because they know that we potentially have far more problems than they do when it comes to some more extreme elements within our own communities. Let's talk about my favourite person. I mean, I just think he's such a glowing example of everything a politician should be. Every time I think about him, I just get these sort of warming sensation in my body, these tingles of patriotism and hope. The London Mayor, Sadiq Khan, who Donald Trump very much doesn't like. Let's listen to a clip of him speaking on Air Force One.
Oh, I didn't want him there. I asked that he not be there. I don't want. I think the mayor of London, Khan,
is among the worst mayors in the world. And we have some bad ones. If you look at Chicago, but I think he's the equivalent of the mayor of Chicago. I think he's done a terrible job. Crime in London is through the roof. The mayor of London, Mayor Khan, has done a terrible job. And on immigration, he's a disaster. No, I asked that he not be there. He wanted to be there, as I understand. I didn't want him.
Who would want him? I mean, Donald Trump is absolutely right to do this, isn't he? Because Sadiq Khan has taken every opportunity to put out his virtue signalling posts. He has been disgustingly shameful, embarrassing, crass, unpolitical, undiplomatic, a conceited, cocky little know-it-all who thinks he is the most self-righteous person on the planet. Talking about the leader of the free world, our special relationship with our closest ally, but no, the 2'4" midget poison dwarf always knows best, doesn't he? And I am pleased to see that Donald Trump said, I don't want him there.
And also, I don't think Sadiq Khan was expecting the invitation. I dare say he's benefited a lot from this kind of extended beef which has existed between the two of them. It has raised his stature, if that's possible, in terms of just allowing him to sound off whenever Trump does anything or comes to town. I think it's, broadly speaking, been good for them. And it is in Donald Trump, he's find someone who likes to nurse a grudge, likes to nurse a feud, and therefore it's something which has now become a kind of routine feature. But you're absolutely right. Not only has Sadiq Khan been an absolute disaster as mayor of London, I also think in terms of the sort of ambassadorial role, the kind of representing the city, he's just made us look like a complete laughingstock in which crime is out of control, but at least there's a pro-trans firework display every New Year's Eve. I mean, it looks absurd from the outside. London has started to take on this reputation, particularly in America, as being a complete basket case in a way that many American democratic-led cities are. And you have to lay that at his door. Everyone has noticed the decline over the course of the past decade. And just because I think almost that's why he has to kind of constantly become a figure in the culture war, to act like he's facing down this far-right American president, or however we would put it, because it distracts from the fact that he's doing a terrible job of it in every other area in London.
Couldn't agree more. It's always great catching up with you, Tom. Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Now, listen, we're going to take a short break now. I'm going to see if I can scare up another brew. I suggest you do the same. Whet your whistle, because when we come back, I would love to hear your thoughts. James is waiting to take your call and then patch you through to the studio. 03444 99 1000 is the number to dial. It's your normal network rate. Also, of course, you can use that number to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a cute little voice note on WhatsApp, and then we'll play it out to the nation. 87222 is the number if you'd rather smuzz me. Good old-fashioned text. Write the word talk before your message if that is the avenue you wish to go down. We're on X at talkTV, and I'll be hearing from some of you after this.
Keir Starmer started the whole thing by talking about freedom, democracy and the rule of law. And it's so embarrassing to hear him talk about these things because he's attacked every single one of them. He spent all his time attacking those things. And this very formal, almost theatrical performance of the two of them, which is just completely meaningless.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the show. Messages first. Rob in Cheshire says, the best part of the Trump-Starmer press conference was the moment Big Don slapped the Sir on his back when he denounced Hamas as terrorists. It nearly knocked him off his feet and took the wind from him. If only he'd slapped him a little bit harder. Oh, gosh, I'm going to be arrested for that, aren't I? Blimey, that's me done for. Alex, you and Julia need to be in a reformed government as you both talk sense, and thank you, Donald Trump, for showing our PM, for he is a coward. Well, I don't know, would I be good in government or would I be dangerous? Oh, I harbour some pretty dark thoughts at times. No, I don't. I'm only kidding you. Julie would be fantastic. She should be like the chief whip or something. She'd keep everybody in check, wouldn't she? Going around nagging everybody. No, she'd be fantastic. Glyn in Catterick says, not sure anyone noticed, but the look on Starmer's face when Trump gave him a reassuring tap on the arm. He was like a kid that won a year's supply of sweets. Pathetic and cringeworthy. Great show. I must admit, normally, whenever Donald Trump's doing anything, I just, you're drawn to him. You look at him. His sort of, the strange way his face moves and his intonation and his vernacular is sort of unlike anything I've ever heard before. But I was drawn to looking at Starmer during that whole press conference because he's not very good at, even though he's quite robotic, he's not very good at hiding on his face that he feels uncomfortable, that he's doing a forced smile, that he's suddenly looking like he's going to relieve himself voluminously. And it was quite a delight to watch yesterday, I must admit. Let's speak now to Mark, who is in Cheshire. Hi, Mark.
Hello, Alex. Morning. How are you this morning?
Yeah, I'm very jolly, very well. I got a certain amount of pleasure from yesterday, I must admit.
Yeah, I did as well. I just wanted, the reason what I was ringing up about was I just wanted to run something past you and about the will to actually stop the boats.
Right.
And it was what Trump said, and he was dead right when he said about using the military. I was thinking about that, and he was like, well, how's that going to work? Anyway, sort of what I came to was that Starmer and the rest of his clown show could actually go and speak to Macron and say, look, they can use his fantastic negotiating skills and say, I'll tell you what, instead of troubling you guys and your police over on the Calais side of France, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll carry on paying, but we'll put our own army over there, and they'll actually stop the boats themselves. And I'll tell you what, do you know, Alex, I was thinking about it, the more that is one way that we can actually stop it immediately. And that we're not even troubling the French.
Well, let's break some of those things down. First of all, putting your own boots on the ground in another country is obviously has to be done by consensus. And France doesn't really want these people clogging up Calais either. I think they're quite happy to see them cross the channel, although arguably, if they weren't able to get access to Britain, they might not come to France in the first place. Number two is, you know, Giorgia Meloni wanted to use the Italian Navy to stop boats in the Mediterranean, which would have helped all of Europe, because that is an initial frontier where they come over from countries such as Tunisia towards Lampedusa and places like that. EU President Ursula von der Leyen, Giorgia Meloni was about to announce this when she was first elected, and von der Leyen flew down and some sort of discussion was happened, and then 24 hours later, it's gone. She's not allowed to do it. I tell you what happened. Italy owes so much debt to the ECB after the Eurozone crisis that von der Leyen would have said, right, if you do this, we're going to basically pull the rug from under your feet economically, because that little bozo with her Elnet hairstyle head seems to love the idea of a migrant crisis. Europe could do this. Together, collectively, Europe could easily defend their frontiers. They could easily, basically, create a huge fence all around Europe. In fact, many countries in Europe have this. Poland has chicken wire fencing with Belarus and troops on the border. Greece is actually doing a very good job at both stopping boats in territorial waters and creating land borders. So everybody in the EU could easily do this if they're all signatories to the ECHR. So you have to start asking yourself, why do they not want to? Now, the second thing is what Sir Keir Starmer would say. Why can't you send the Royal Navy into the channel to turn boats around? I mean, they're happy enough for our fishermen to have wars with French fishermen on the high seas. But when it comes to actually stopping invaders crossing the channel, no, you can't do that. International law. Oh, it's law, it's law. A couple of things to say about that. First of all, this whole idea of it's law, it's law. What do you think it is that Parliament does, Mark?
Yeah.
Why?
The event laws.
It makes
to suit that.
It makes laws, abolishes laws, and amend laws. Yeah. That is what its whole point is. That's why they're there. They're not just supposed to sit there, like, I don't know, twiddling their fingers on green benches, popping up and asking a question, getting a few lines in a newspaper, and then cutting some red tape back at home in their constituencies. The point of Parliament is essentially the primary lawmaking entity of the United Kingdom. Let's not get into the Supreme Court and all the rubbish that Tony Blair did. But this idea that it cannot be stopped is bunkum. You know it, I know it, America knows it, the world knows it, the international criminal cartel of people traffickers know it, terrorist organisations know it, hostile regimes know it. Everybody who is benefiting from what is essentially an international industry, the international illegal immigration industrial complex, they all know it. This could be stopped. I know it. And so I keep... And this is what the Americans were asking me. Why is Europe doing this? What is going on? We know it can be done. We've done this in America. You can pull out of supranational institutions that are preventing you from doing it. You can make new laws. You can use your police. You can use your armies. Of course, you can stop people randomly coming into the country. You can declare a national emergency and point out that among those numbers are terrorists, are criminals, are people who are paying international criminal cartels and then working in the black market. There are so many devices you can use. And America's like, what is going on? And do you know,
Alex, the point of the thing that's frustrating me is that do you know something? Going back to the negotiating skills and to Macron though, is that do you know something? There's so many things that we can do. They love their fish over in France, and they love fishing and our waters. And the thing is, if they didn't agree to it, do you know something? They go like, well, I'll tell you what, right? Do you know something? We're suggesting something here that's not even going to trouble you guys. But do you know something? If you're not going to agree to it, then do you know something? We'll look at something else, and one of them will be we're going to withdraw from that treaty about the fishing boats having rights into our waters.
Well, this is the thing. We had a brilliant negotiating chip because allowing European vessels to access our waters was supposed to be year upon year diminishing by quota size and catch, and it was coming to the end of the tenure where we were supposed to essentially have full control, take back control of our seas. And when the EU said, can we have another 5 years? Sir Keir Starmer said, I'll give you 4. And the EU said, no. We want another 5 years. And Sir Keir Starmer said, go on then, have 12. I'm sorry, it's a huge socialist, globalist stitch-up, Mark. That's the only conclusion I can draw. Occam's razor, you know? All these people together don't want to stop the migration crisis. They want to keep pushing ahead with creating a United States of Europe. Starmer's part of that posse. And there's your answer. Mark, thank you ever so much, Mark in Cheshire there. Let's do a couple of voice notes now. This is Kim.
I thought Donald Trump hit the nail on the head yesterday when he said illegal migration destroys your country from within. He's absolutely right. And Alex, please explain to me, what am I not understanding about this one in, one out scheme? Surely this would mean if we deported all of the migrants that came here illegally, we would end up with the same number here legally. Is this not just making illegal migration legal? I can't see what this achieves at all.
You're right. You're right. It ends up being just sort of net zero, for want of a better phrase. If you're saying that we'll send one out for everyone that comes in, you're basically going, keep on coming. Play the lottery. You might be one of the lucky ones who gets a 4-star hotel and a free home. Let's listen to Sally now.
Morning, Alex. I wish they'd stop calling this scheme one in, one out. It's one in, one out, one back in, plus their family, and a free house and benefits. It's not one in, one out.
No, it's about 1,000 in, one out every now and then, after we spent millions of pounds paying both of the bills of the lawyers for the government and the lawyers for the people fighting deportation. And like you said, when someone gets to stay, half their village will then follow. So well done for correctly identifying that this is just an utter scam. Before we go to break, I can tell you that I don't know if you were aware of this story, but there was an elderly British couple who used to like going on hollybobs to Afghanistan. Now that's because they married in the Afghan capital in 1970. They'd been together in the 60s. Back then in Afghanistan, you had garden parties, champagne, and could wear a miniskirt. That's before the beardy weirdies came in and made everyone dress up like ghosts. But because they have such an affection, because they lived there, they used to go back to Afghanistan. Now they were detained earlier this year. I can let you know that Barbie Reynolds, 76, and her husband Peter, who's 80, after being detained by the Taliban's Interior Ministry on the 1st of February, are now freed. They were in a maximum security prison in Kabul, but they were safely released from detention today following mediation led by Qatar. Now, there's another element to this story, by the way, and I don't know who was paying attention during the press conference yesterday, but America, Donald Trump said, this is breaking news. He wants to get an airbase back in Bagram in Afghanistan in order to be 1 hour's flight away from where China is developing their nuclear weapons. And I have a feeling that what you're going to see now is, after spending a long time trying to fight the Taliban in Afghanistan, we might end up with bilateral arrangements with the Taliban in Afghanistan in terms of which is the worst of your enemies. We're not going to be able to get rid of them. We're not going to go back in there and fight them again. It's been an utter pickle, that scrappy exit from Afghanistan. We certainly know we've got a lot of Afghans who we might want to send back at some point, deportees. Also the crazy scheme where people fleeing the Taliban are coming here. Make it make sense. But what we do know is Donald Trump has his eyes on re-establishing an airbase in Bagram, which I'm sure would be both UK and US. And I wonder if that has been in part of the negotiations that now sees this elderly British couple freed. We're going to have a little break now, but don't go anywhere, because when I come back, we're going to be joined by Lord Toby Young, Conservative peer and founder of the Free Speech Union. That's after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
One of the central tenets, I think, of the discussions happening both behind the scenes and in front of camera between the United States and the United Kingdom yesterday was how to define free speech. What are its limits? What is considered okay? Should things be cracked down upon? I mean, certainly the Attorney General in America, Pam Bondi, has created waves over there by going onto a podcast and seemingly suggesting that there are limits on freedom of speech, something that most Americans get quite concerned about, particularly those on the right. Let's speak now to Lord Young, Conservative peer and founder of the Free Speech Union. Welcome to the show. Let's first of all talk about this fascinating story. Not fascinating, frankly, it's hardly surprising. Our very own Harry Cole, on his podcast, Harry Cole Saves the West, interviewed a MAGA mum, a UK nan, who cops in the UK, well, she's a US citizen, but she lives in the UK. Cops came over to her house and ordered her to apologise for a Facebook post. Let's have a little watch of that clip.
Did it make you feel like a criminal?
Yes, I've never been arrested in my life. I live a very quiet life. And here's the thing. Ultimately, it comes down to this. Pardon me. Even though I never found out what it was that I said exactly or what it was about, I even tried to find out roughly what it was about, and he couldn't tell me. The point is this. He said it wasn't it wasn't against the law. This was not he wasn't going to arrest me. I wasn't I wasn't going to be arrested. So I'm kind of like, whatever it was I said doesn't matter, because if it's not an arrestable offense, then
why is he at your front door? Exactly.
Absolutely.
What's your message to Keir Starmer then? What's your message to the British government as an American citizen who's felt the tough end of the British state for seemingly no reason at all other than being, as you put it so succinctly, a bit mouthy on the internet? What's your message to the British government?
Well, I hadn't really thought this one through, but I would say that the British people are going to fight. You know, they're not afraid to fight. They've been quiet all this time. They've been polite. They've been well behaved. But I think they're going to push things too far. I think people are starting to get angry.
People are starting to get angry indeed. Now, Lord Young, I know that the Free Speech Union was there to help protect her.
Yeah, that's right. She is a member of the Free Speech Union, and she reached out to us when she was visited by a Thames Valley police officer. Happily, because of our involvement, the police decided to drop the case. But it was really quite extraordinary that a police officer would come round to her house and ask her to apologise for a Facebook post that, as she just said, wasn't against the law. I mean, absolutely extraordinary. Are the police now acting like school prefects and intervening in petty squabbles, asking one person to apologise to another in the hope of diffusing it? But that's almost comical. You know, what are the police doing intervening in petty social media spats? But it was also quite sinister, because the policeman, if you watch the video that the Free Speech Union posted yesterday that Deborah shot of the encounter, the police officer says, if you don't apologise, you'll have to come down to the station. So really sinister, and not something the police should be threatening anyone with. They shouldn't be getting involved in this kind of dispute. They shouldn't be following up complaints about, from people who are upset by somebody's posted on social media if it's not against the law. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. And as she says to the police officer in the video, aren't there any burglaries or rapes or murders in this area to investigate? Why are you wasting your time on this petty nonsense? I mean, it really does beg a belief, and it really, I think, undermines public trust in the police.
It is extraordinary, but the problem is it's actually becoming quite ordinary. it's actually becoming normalised. More and more of these stories emerge. And what I want to understand, and what I want to ask you, is what is enabling all of this? Where does the buck stop? Because the police are basically saying, well, look, you know, this whole concept of being non-crime hate incidents shouldn't exist. When the government is standing behind lecterns, they say police should do proper policing. So why on earth is this happening? By what device? I would imagine that there'll be some brainwashed people who've gone through the policing college who are extreme leftists who think that this is how they should be running the show. But also there's got to be something underneath it, a sort of burden, if you will, where when a call comes in and a complaint is made, they feel like their hands are tied operationally and having to follow through and do something so they can report back and said, well, we went to see her and we've done something, box check, ticked off, we're not going to get into trouble. What is the sort of fabric underneath this that is enabling this stuff to happen?
Well, Sir Mark Rowley, in response to the public furore over the arrest of Graham Linehan by 5 armed police officers at Heathrow, again, just for social media posts a few weeks ago, he said that the reason the police were overreacting in this way to complaints about supposedly offensive social media posts is because their hands are tied. The law in this area is unclear. Home Office guidance complicates their life even further, and they really have no choice, according to Sir Mark Rowley, but to follow up these complaints in the aggressive, heavy-handed way they do. Now, that's not particularly credible, because we know the police have operational independence. They have a great deal of discretion. Only 1 in 5 reported shoplifting offences is investigated by the police, and you will know if you've reported a burglary or your car being broken into, that quite often the police won't even turn up. They'll just give you a crime reference number for, making a claim on insurance purposes. So it's sort of nonsense to claim that the police, their hands are tied and they have no choice but to follow up every report of an offensive social media post. So I think there's another, I think that's a factor, but I think another factor is, as you say, the woke capture of the police via the College of Policing. The Times submitted, they submitted various subject access requests to find out how many people the police were arresting every year over reported online speech offences. And this was just for 2 offences, so the real number is probably much higher than this. But the Times found out that in, I think, 2023, over 12,000 people were arrested under suspicion of having committed a speech offence online. That's an average of over 30 a day. And interestingly, in this Times report, appeared in the Times a few months ago, Thames Valley Police, the police who followed up this complaint and sent an officer around to interview Deborah, they were one of the worst offenders. And I think the Chief Constable of Thames Valley Police is particularly zealous at following up complaints about supposedly offensive social media posts. The police didn't arrest Deborah in this case, or they did threaten to take her down to the station. But I think 2 or 3 people a day in the Thames Valley area are being arrested under suspicion of having committed just 2 speech offences. So it is absolutely extraordinary that the police are wasting their time, devoting resources to this kind of thing. And I think Sir Mark Rowley and a couple of other senior police officers have written to the Home Secretary saying you need to do these following things if you don't want the police to be wasting their time in this way. They're sort of putting the ball in her court. She has actually said she doesn't at the very least think the police should be investigating non-crime hate incidents. So there does seem to be a head of steam gathering to scrap non-crime hate incidents. I mean, we know at the Free Speech Union from FOI requests we've submitted that over 250,000 non-crime hate incidents have been recorded since they were first introduced in 2014 by the College of Policing. I mean, that is absolutely an extraordinary number when you think about the number of crimes that are going unsolved. I mean, I think the stat is something like in half the areas in England and Wales, not a single burglary has been solved in the past 3 years. So why they're wasting their time investigating non-crimes is just an absolute mystery. I'm going to propose an amendment to the Crime and Policing Bill in the House of Lords when it's before us next month to scrap NCHIs, and I think we might get somewhere with that we might win a division decision on that, and the bill, when it's sent back to the Commons, will have this amendment attached, which would scrap non-crime hate incidents. And I hope the government will take it seriously.
I hope they will as well. Lord Young, thank you ever so much. That was Lord Young, a Conservative peer and founder of the Free Speech Union. Sometimes I feel like I'm one of those really annoying, persistent, petulant toddlers who goes, why? But why? But why? Because I'm sorry, the Home Secretary could stand up and go, we're not going to do this anymore. I say to the police, stop doing this. The Justice Secretary could do it. They themselves could say, we're going to scrap this vote in Parliament, done, done, done. Whip everybody to say we're going to get rid of non-crime hate incidents. Where are the police and crime commissioners? An utterly useless layer of bureaucracy. Where have they gone? Why aren't they saying to the heads of their police forces, the police chiefs in their particular area, stop investigating this rubbish? Nobody has to do this. It is clearly wrong. It clearly makes us look like we live in some sort of despotic regime. Quite frankly, I'm beginning to think we do, which is why I just can't understand that nobody's taken the lead on this and said this has to stop. This is utterly, disgustingly appalling. The very first time this happened, someone should have gone, bing, 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 lights on the dashboard here. This makes us look like a banana republic. Perhaps we shouldn't be doing this. But no, high-profile case after high-profile case. Well-known comedy writers, British journalists and columnists. I mean, seriously, the time for going, let us not arrest people or send the cop shop over to your front door for words should have happened about 5 years ago. The fact that it is still going on, means there are enough people out there that want it to still be going on. Right. After the break, I'm going to be joined by the brilliant Steve Gill, former advisor to Clinton and Bush, to talk about everything that happened during the state visit. That's after this.
Stuck to that for the first sort of 3 years, and then he completely lost control and was running big deficits even when the economy was growing strongly. And well, if you do that, then when you get inevitable recession, as we did 2008, 2009, then you are in serious trouble.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show and welcome aboard HMS This Ship is Sinking. Please help us, the Donald, Mr. Steve Gill, former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administrations. Great to catch up with you again, Steve. I mean, wow, what a state visit. I found myself doing lots of American media and I had to try and explain to them, you know, the reason this is all in a 12th century fortress built for William the Conqueror was because it had to be a fortress. If he was let out into London, all the sort of Trump derangement syndrome victims that we have in Britain would be out in force. But, you know, do you think, even though it was closely curated, it was micromanaged, it was very different from what we saw Obama was offered, you know, he wasn't allowed to go and speak to Parliament, timetabled for during our parliamentary conference season, so Parliament's in recess because, of course, all the backbenchers in the government's own seats would be booing and hissing and jeering and chanting. Someone clearly tried to put Sadiq Khan in the stationery cupboard over the weekend. David Lammy appeared to be in there as well. But despite all of the micromanaging of how this looked and how this is curated and choreographed to the public eye. At the start of the press conference, again, scripted lines celebrating the deals in tech, in nuclear and defence. Then came question time. And then we saw the divisions, didn't we? What did you make of those two men, one tiny weeny, one big, side by side on the podium, and that sort of paternal, tough love advice that your president was giving our Prime Minister?
To me, the highlight was when Keir Starmer made the comment that he opposes Hamas, and Trump literally puts his hands on his back and says, "Good job." It was very paternal at that point. But I do think what you saw was that both Starmer and I think King Charles recognized that the way to work with Trump is to appeal to the personal connection that you have with him. He and King Charles obviously get along great, and that personal connection, he had great respect for the Queen, he has great respect for the Crown, and obviously for King Charles. He and Starmer come from such different backgrounds. You know, Starmer came up hard scrabble, Trump came up with the silver spoon in his mouth. Both of them got politically where they are very different. You know, Starmer got where he is because of an own goal by the Tories. I mean, they screwed it up, so he gets in power. Trump fought his way back into office. So very different men, very different paths to where they are. And yet they did, at least for show, get along very great, particularly in this press conference when they did disagree. But contrary to what you see with Trump sometimes, they disagreed very agreeably.
Exactly. I think that is a very important point to make. I was out having a din-dins with a group of people, and one of them was an extremely well-known household name senior figure from the very first Trump administration. And I asked him, I said, you know, there appears to be this extroverts bonhommery between Starmer and Trump, but what does the Trump administration really think of Starmer and the Labour Party? And he said, oh, we got the measure of him. We know. We don't like him. We're concerned about him. We're worried about him. And Trump will be nicey-nicey when he wants things done. I get the impression Trump loves Britain a lot more than our Prime Minister does. But he's quite mercurial. He can turn very quickly and suddenly make your life extremely difficult. I wonder what sort of exchanges were happening behind closed doors if in front of the cameras Donald Trump was saying to the UK Prime Minister, you should use the military to stop the migration crisis. You need to get oil and gas out of the North Sea. Instead, what you're doing is making it harder for us to bring down Putin by lowering energy prices, by adding more barrels of oil and gas to the market. It's the same accusations from America as before. Stop coming to us, Europe, with your begging bowl and expecting Daddy Donald to open the wallet when you can't run your own affairs. Do you think that the Trump administration at some point, we're only 1 year, just over a year into the premiership of Sir Keir Starmer, do you think there's a risk that he might lose patience with the United Kingdom and that paternal advice, the tough love we saw on the podium, might suddenly become tariffs?
You know, Alex, we've both been involved in the government before, so we know that the public appearance of leaders at the end is different, as you point out, than what's going on behind closed doors. And there were some glimpses, particularly on free speech, for example. It seemed like Starmer was a little defensive about, oh yeah, we've had free speech here, we believe in free speech. and yet you know that was because of what was being tweaked behind the scenes. You know, you've had J.D. Vance, the vice president, criticize the UK for lack of free speech and tie that to tariffs. And again, you and I have been involved for a long time in this kind of stuff. I've never seen tariffs tied to somebody's free speech policies, tied to somebody else's immigration policies. And yet you're right, the tariff battles are not over, even though they've made some progress, even though there's some deals that are announced. There are still some glitches in the works. And we'll see if, as you point out, Trump gets frustrated and decides, okay, this is rubbish. I'm gonna clean up this mess the way I can, which is by putting the economic pressure on the UK.
So it's almost like watching a game of Nerf ball or something. You had Donald Trump and the UK press pack lobbing things at Starmer, watching him sort of duck and weave and try not to be hit. And I thought it was quite poignant when Donald Trump made a point of bringing up Charlie Kirk. He must have done that because he must have seen some of the things that were said by people in Starmer's own government on Charlie Kirk. The way that most of the UK public had come out in support of Charlie Kirk at a vigil in London, but a lot of our sort of left-wing public figures had said the most despicable, disgusting, disrespectful, disgraceful, shameless things online. Let's talk now about, well, let's first of all watch this clip of Donald Trump talking about a matter that's taking place in America, which is the matter of the presenter Jimmy Kimmel.
Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else, and he said a horrible thing about a great gentleman known as Charlie Kirk. And Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you can call that free speech or not. He was fired for lack of talent.
The free speech debate, of course, is raging in America, as it is in the United Kingdom. You guys are concerned about comments made by your Attorney General of there potentially being limits to it. I would just say that Jimmy Kimmel has basically brought his profession and his employer into disgrace by just basically stating falsehoods. But it is an interesting situation. How aware are Americans of the things that are taking place in the United Kingdom? Recently, an American woman had police turn up at her door in the United Kingdom for a post she had made on social media. They wouldn't even tell her which post it was. Are you guys across how kind of dystopian it is over here? Quite how serious? There's a league table showing that we're basically the worst in the world for people being arrested or even put in prison for things they've said.
Well, or memes. You do a meme and you get arrested for some, cartoon that you post, or as you point out, you're critical of someone or the government, and it gets termed hate speech. I think it takes big events, and we saw that a little bit with the Raise the Colors over the weekend, when you have thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, or as Tommy Robinson claimed, millions that were in the streets. Those visuals do capture attention, and I think some Americans saw that. But I was talking with a friend yesterday that as much criticism as there might be for Starmer and the fact that Labor ran claiming we're going to stop the boats coming in, we're going to stop the crime increase. They have not done that. But they technically have 4 more years in power without an election.
And let's see what they do with it, Steve. But please tell everyone in America, come back, Donald. Help us, save us. Wonderful catching up with you, Steve. Always great to hear a perspective from the other side of the pond. Got to take a break now. Don't go anywhere. I'm back after this.
Majesty. Melania and I are deeply grateful to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. The phrase special relationship, seen from American eyes, the word special does not begin to do it justice. We're joined by history and fate, by love and language. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
Security remains the cornerstone of this special relationship. We have the deepest, most advanced defense relationship in the world.
As I said last night, the bond between our countries is like no other anywhere in the world. The United States and the United Kingdom have done more good on this planet than any two nations in human history.
We are working together to end the humanitarian catastrophe in the Middle East.
The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with President.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. I really enjoyed the first hour. I'm still really enjoying some of the outcomes of that press conference. The only thing that I'm concerned about, folks, is this, right? I watched it and I was like, yeah, America knows. They know. They're watching, they're listening, and they are very concerned about the United Kingdom. Thank goodness somebody is. We're not alone. Donald's got our backs. And he certainly seemed to have our back during the Q&A session. That was the moment where the scripts went out of the window and all of a sudden the sort of more ad-lib part of politics happened. And it was very clear that there are huge divisions between the US and the UK when it comes to the style of politics, let's say, to put it mildly. All that bonhomie of the special relationship, all being done brilliantly in front of camera. I think Donald Trump hates him. I do. I think Donald Trump probably despises Sir Keir Starmer. He's a good man, he's a good friend, he's nice. Donald Trump's smarter than people think. This whole butter him up and do this and do that. Yes, he likes to have that happen. Why? Because he wants to be top dog. He wants to be buttered up because it shows that all these other nations are deferential to him, OK? So do not think for any moment that Donald Trump's going, that's Sir Keir, he's such a nice guy. Donald knows what he wants from Britain, what he wants from any country. He wants America to be getting richer. He wants America to have fair trade, which we have actually a fairly balanced trading relationship with America. He needs strategic cooperation where it is essential, matters such as defence and matters such as geopolitics. And I don't know if you noticed this, there's a lot of stuff that got sort of washed out really when more sort of, you know, bright things appeared on the scene. But the highlight initially was of defence partnership on basically creating weaponry together because we live in very unstable times. The anti-Western axis hard at work, unifying and trying to find ways that they can scratch each other's backs, whether it's the fact that they're buying illegal Russian oil and gas on the high seas from the Shadow Fleet and then refining it and selling it back to Europe to basically fund the Kremlin's war machine, which is why Donald said, look, Britain, you've got North Sea oil and gas, get it out, drill, Britain, drill. That's where you're going to be energy self-sufficient. That way you might even be able to export it. That way there's just going to be a lot more of the stuff floating about on the market because we're doing that approach, which means the prices will come down massively and Putin's entire economic model for being able to be a belligerent will fall apart. It is constantly with America saying to Europe, stop coming to us and asking us to rescue you when you got yourself into this mess. You don't seem to be able to get out of this mess. And if you continue to mess things up, you're gonna drag us down with you. You are the keystone of Western civilization. We can't keep rescuing you if you can't rescue yourself. See that knife in your hand? Put it down. Stop playing with blades, Europe, and get real. That seems to be the message from America. But no, but really interesting things. The cooperation on nuclear as well, extremely important. I actually kind of worked on that back in the day. Little side hustles that I have. Some very good things that came out. But, you know, Donald knows what America needs in the UK, but make no mistake, I think he probably despises Starmer. And who can blame him? Let's speak to Paul Embry now, trade unionist and author of, oh, look at this, author of Despised. Maybe that's why I kept saying the word. My eye must have caught that. Despised, Why the Modern Left Loathes the Working Class. Welcome to the show, Paul. What did you make of the in front of camera bonhomie, the scripted lines, but some of the little things that you saw, some of those body language cues, what happened during the course of the state visit? I want to get your assessment on this from a sort of ex-Labour or currently Labour, I don't know where you stand still, from a left-wing point of view, so to speak.
Well, good morning, Alex. I mean, you probably won't be too surprised to hear me say that I loathe Donald Trump with a passion on a personal level. I think he's an appalling human being, but there is no doubt at the same time that he has done some things in America that frankly needed doing, taking on the DEI agenda, which has been so divisive, taking on the trans maniacs in terms of men in women's sports, which absolutely needed to be done, talking about bringing jobs and industries back to America, thousands of jobs and entire industries that have been lost abroad and have, given rise to huge deindustrialization across the Rust Belt and has created, I think, a political chasm between the elites, particularly the Democrats when they were in power, and ordinary working class voters. So in that respect, I think he's to be admired for doing some things that need doing, but that needed doing. But that doesn't mean that we should admire him on a human level. I suspect.
Paul, I never really understand this, right? If he's a good leader doing good things for America, that's all I care about. I don't know him personally to know whether I'd like him or loathe him on a personal level. I always find it. I despise Sir Keir Starmer for how he's running this country. Actually, I have a feeling if I sat down and hung out with the man, I'd probably get along with him fairly decently. I never really understand that when people say I loathe someone on a personal level when they probably don't know him.
Well, the truth is, Alex, I mean, you can get an insight when someone is the American president and they're in the public eye pretty much 24/7. I think you can get an insight into their character. And when you have a president who, talks about women in the way that he does, he was caught, off guard once talking about grabbing them by a certain area, which I won't repeat.
I don't know, Paul, I've heard much worse, frankly, and laughed at it. I ain't gonna lie.
But not from the American president.
He wasn't the president at the time. Anyway, let's not go down this route. Let's forget this because everyone's entitled to sort of love, loathe whoever they want to. Let's stick with the politics of this because it seemed to me that there was a sort of almost paternal feeling towards Britain from Donald Trump. He kept repeating again and again when he sort of was saying how much he dislikes Sadiq Khan. My mother was born in Scotland. I love the United Kingdom. He seemed to be taking the opportunity to come and give the Prime Minister a public dressing down, saying, you're getting things wrong in this country. Your people are suffering as a result. Sort it out. And I think he's got a point, doesn't he?
Well, I mean, to be blunt, I think from Keir Starmer's point of view, I think the state visit and particularly the press conference yesterday probably went about as well as he could have expected. I mean, I think actually Trump was quite restrained. When you see the way that he speaks in very blunt and abrasive terms in press conferences with other world leaders, he pretty much held back. So from the Labour government's point of view, I think it was pretty much a success. But look, you have to sometimes hold the candle to the devil, as the saying goes. And I can't imagine that when they're both out of power, as they probably both will be in a few years' time, Starmer possibly sooner, I can't imagine they're going to meet up and go dancing together. I don't think that they are bedfellows politically or personally, but to both their credit, I have to say, they're playing the game. They're playing the diplomatic game. They know that it's in the interests of their country to at least show that they're forging some sort of decent rapport, some sort of personal relationship. And that's what you have to do. So for all my criticisms of Trump as an individual, I think it's absolutely right that Starmer does reach out to him and does try to cement the very...
I mean, Starmer doesn't really have a choice, does he? If we don't have the big tech investment from America, we're going to hell in a handcart economically, and we're getting that despite the fact that Lord knows how we're going to power all of the servers that these big tech companies are going to need, considering we've got the highest highest energy prices in the world. To me, Starmer's out the begging bowl because we're basically bottoming out. And thank goodness Donald Trump loves Britain enough that he can put those political differences to one side and be there for us. However, the one person that Donald Trump didn't want in the entourage of Starmer yesterday, someone who he's very keen to avoid, and someone who, frankly, I think that, I mean, Starmer doesn't want to, but I think Starmer needs to drag him to one side and say, listen, mate, keep your trap shut. You're disgracing us on the world stage, is Sadiq Khan. Let's remind ourselves of what the President of America said on his way back home on Air Force One.
I don't want him there. I asked that he not be there. I don't want. I think the mayor of London, Khan, is among the worst mayors in the world, and we have some bad ones. If you look at Chicago, if you look at, but I think he's the equivalent of the mayor of Chicago. I think he's done a terrible job. Crime in London is through the roof. The mayor of London, Khan, Mayor Khan, has done a terrible job. And on immigration, he's a disaster. No, I asked that he not be there. He wanted to be there, as I understand. I didn't want him.
The thing is about Sadiq Khan, he'll probably love that, won't he? The man's such a narcissist. Just the mention of his own name probably gives him chills of satisfaction. But, I mean, you can't blame Donald Trump for saying, I don't want him anything to do with this, if that is what happened. I'm sure Sadiq Khan says, I didn't want to come anyway. Because he has behaved disgracefully. He doesn't appear to understand the art of protocol, of diplomacy, of statesmanship. He's just a little narcissist who likes to virtue signal.
Well, I mean, let's be blunt, Alex. I could throw exactly as I did at the top of the chat. I mean, that's pretty much what I said about Donald Trump on a human level. And you're saying it about Sadiq Khan. Now, I absolutely have got criticisms of Sadiq Khan. I think the whole thing in terms of the relationship between Khan and Trump and some of the public announcements has been pretty unedifying on both sides, to be perfectly honest. But I think with Sadiq Khan, he needs to, first of all, concentrate on being mayor of London. There's a whole lot that's wrong in London. I work in London. I've met Sadiq Khan in the course of my work as a former trade union official, actually. And I think most Londoners would like to see the London mayor concentrating on London issues rather than on foreign policy issues. And I think the second thing is too often Sadiq Khan plays to a particular cohort of London voter, which is that kind of young, cosmopolitan, liberal, globalist voter, and forgets that actually across London there are millions of people, actually voters, many who voted for Brexit, despite the propaganda that's often spread about the London Brexit vote. And are actually quite small-c conservative in their views. There's working class areas like the place I grew up in Barking and Dagenham that are worried about things like globalisation and rapid demographic change and the agenda of the cosmopolitan liberals in charge. But Khan never factors those people in. Khan never, when he's making public pronouncements or policy decisions, and we saw famously a couple of years ago, you'll recall, there was a mayor's document that actually said that a white family was not representative of London. Yeah. I mean, if that was said about any other cohort, demographic cohort, they would have been held to pay. So I would like to see him concentrating on some of those issues rather than getting into continual spats with the American president.
Oh, yeah, I don't want him concentrating on those issues because I get the impression that Sadiq Khan is essentially an inverse racist. So I'd rather he stayed out of talking about things like that and just did what he's supposed to do on crime, did what he's supposed to do on grooming gangs, which we know exist in London, rather than trying to bait Susan Hall by trying to sort of make her walk into a trap where he'll turn around and call her an Islamophobe or a racist. That's why I dislike the man. We have very serious issues in London, and instead he's snide, he's sneering, and he's name-calling and isn't remotely doing his job. Let's talk now about this crazy Your Party. I mean, I made a little joke on X because Zara Sultana, for those of you who don't know the story, this is the new party that was sort of established by Zara Sultana and Jeremy Corbyn, and most of those sort of Muslim vote MPs are now part of it as well. Something funny's gone on where Zara Sultana sent out an email saying, you know, sign up to this, asking for membership fees. It went to 20,000 supporters. Jeremy Corbyn then booted her out, sent another email saying, whatever you do, do not pay money, do not use this particular link. A row erupted over this fundraising, which could have got them over £1 million. And Zara Sultana has responded, calling all of her colleagues a sexist boys' club, saying that all of these men didn't want to hear her views, didn't want her to play a significant part in the party. Do you think she's got a point?
Well, no, frankly. And I would say that as someone who's been active on the political left for virtually all of his adult life, I've come into contact with the far left quite a lot. And I have to say, this is pretty remarkable, even by their standards. The far left are always, this is proper sort of People's Front of Judea stuff. They are always focused far more on obscure points of doctrine than they are on the bigger picture in terms of trying to win people's votes, and are far more interested too often in fighting each other than fighting what they would call the real enemy. And I think in some respects, I think the person who would probably be happiest about this is Keir Starmer, because I think there was probably, I mean, I don't think this Your Party thing was ever going to win power, let me be clear about that. But it certainly had the capacity to take votes from Labour's left flank. I think that was clear, particularly if it hooked up with the Greens, who under their new leader seem to be making some cut through. And I think that put Labour in a really difficult position, where they were suffering from a pincer attack, where they had Reform on their right flank in the Red War and places like that, and the emergence of this party and the Greens on their left flank. So if this thing all turns to dust, as it may well do, as lots of far left initiatives frankly do, then I think the beneficiary of that will be Keir Starmer. But again, I mean, what an unedifying spectacle. I mean, the party hasn't even launched yet, and there's already a schism. I mean, that tells you pretty much all you need.
I must admit, I made a rather sort of pointed comment about maybe some of the patriarchal attitudes of some of the men in her party, and whether or not she'd want to call those out. Listen, it's funny, isn't it? Every now and then a story lands on your desk, and it is the perfect story for the person that you happen to be speaking to. Now, this is a Talk exclusive. Remind me where you said you were from there, where you were born, Paul.
I grew up in Barking and Dagenham.
Oh, perfect, because this is a Barking story. Remind me, Paul, of what your former profession was.
Well, I still am actually a firefighter.
Oh, perfect. This is all about Barking Fire Station. Would you believe? Seriously. It's a Talk exclusive by Isabel Oakeshott. Apparently, our national flag was proudly hanging at Barking Fire Station. But a 999 call came in demanding that it be torn down. The complaints came in at 10:53 on Wednesday morning. A caller rang the emergency line, of course meant for life or death incidents, to report that firefighters were displaying a Union Jack inside their station. Instead of dismissing the call, London's Fire Brigade Central Control contacted the station and ordered the watch person on duty to remove the flag. The firefighter refused. The matter was then escalated to a senior officer, a borough commander, who overruled the watchman and commanded the flag be taken down. Now, a London Fire Brigade spokesperson has said, as a uniform service, the brigade has clear policies on how flags should be flown across the organisation. The Union flag is flown at the brigade's headquarters in Southwark and at the London Operations Centre. At London fire stations where a flagpole is present, the brigade's crested flag should be flown. But, I mean, what is your reaction to this? So, I'm sorry if I've just put you on the spot. It's just emerged on my desk too as our own exclusive, but I just couldn't believe it. And the fact that I'm speaking to you, should they have buckled to this? Should that flag still be flying there?
Well, I mean, as you say, it's literally the first time I've heard about this story, and you know, you'll appreciate I don't know all the details other than what you've told me there. I always think, I mean, I would like to see the national flag flying from all public buildings. Actually, we fly so many different flags, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's the Pride flag, and too rarely do we actually fly our own national flag from public buildings. So I have absolutely no problem with it at all. I mean, it's certainly true to say, I have to say, that there is quite a strict policy in fire services about when flags should be flown. You know, if a member of the royal family dies, for example, if it's St George's Day or something like that. So it could be argued that strictly the flag wasn't being flown in accordance with policy. I like to see a common sense thing a common sense approach taken to these type of things. If people are simply displaying in a kind of benign, inoffensive way, expressing their patriotism, I think that's pretty harmless.
But also, this is inside the station. What are they going to do? Phone up and complain that you're making chili con carne next or something? You deign to eat a pork chop while you're sitting around hanging out waiting for the emergency call to come in. I mean, it's just a constant erasure, frankly, of our culture and the things that should bind us together. Paul, I love speaking to you. Thank you ever so much for coming on the programme. I really appreciate your time. That's the brilliant Paul Embry there. Former trade unionist, author of Despised: Why the Modern Left Loathes the Working Class. Let's take a short break now. When I come back, we're going to be talking about the biggest division, I think, that exists. Well, maybe not the biggest, maybe the biggest, a huge one anyway, that exists between the UK and the United States, which is the fact that Sir Keir Starmer is about to call on the recognition of a Palestinian state, something I vehemently disagree with. We're going to be catching up with Jake Wallace-Simons after this, author of Israelophobia, the newest version of the whole oldest hatred, and what to do about it. That's after this.
Gordon Brown came to power in the late 1990s, and he said, you know, we're going to balance the books across the economic cycle. We might borrow during the bad times, but we'll repay debt during the good times. He stuck to that for the first sort of 3 years, and then he completely lost control and was running big deficits even when the economy was growing strongly. And, well, if you do that, then when you get inevitable recession, as we did 2008, 2009, then you are in serious trouble.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back to the show. Now, I think one of the most important points of yesterday's press conference was Donald Trump whacking Sir Keir Starmer on the back when Sir Keir Starmer managed to utter the words that Hamas were terrible people. Well done. Well done. Now, one thing that I heard Mike Pompeo say during the course of the week, who's the former Secretary of State for America, brilliant man, actually, very genius guy, excellent on geopolitics, was the problem with Europe. It seems to forget who the bad people are. It seems to forget what is good and what is bad. You know, China, bad. Atlanticism, good. Hamas, bad. Israel, natural allies, good. And he just said, I don't know what's gone on. It's like there's been this huge inversion of understanding who the enemy is. But shall we, have we got that clip there to roll that we can see at the press conference? Yes, we do. Luke is air punching. That's what I like. That was an almost 80s gesture of triumph. Let's roll it and see what happened at the press conference.
Why is the UK's position on a Palestinian state, in your view, wrong?
We discussed this, amongst other things. We had the best part of an hour, I think, upstairs earlier today, just one-to-one, going through a number of affairs, world affairs, in private. And we absolutely agree on the need for peace and a roadmap, because the situation in Gaza is intolerable. The hostages have been held for a very, very long time, and they must be freed. And we need aid to get into Gaza at speed. The question of recognition needs to be seen, and so it's part of that overall package which hopefully takes us from the appalling situation we're in now to the outcome of a safe and secure Israel, which we do not have.
I want the hostages released now, right now, not 1, 2, we'll give you 3 more tomorrow. And, you know, like it's been, but we're the ones that got all the hostages released. We got many, many came to the Oval Office, and I've heard stories like I've never thought even possible.
OK, let's speak now to Jake Wallace-Simons, who has got a new book coming out, actually. He's a brilliant man. It's coming out in 2 weeks. Never Again, How the West Betrayed Jews and Itself. Now, the title of your book is really interesting, isn't it? Because reflecting on what Mike Pompeo said, if we don't understand in the Western world that we are founded on Judeo-Christian allies, that Israel is the only Jewish state on planet Earth, that most of its neighbours want to destroy it, who don't share our values, and in wanting to destroy Israel, guess who they'll want to destroy next? That is right. By and large, Islam tends to be rather a campaigning religion. If we don't get that fundamental truth about what we're built on, who our allies are, and how this fight matters to all of us, we're in one hell of a pickle. So why is it that the UK, not just the UK, France as well, wants to push ahead with recognising a Palestinian state?
It's quite extraordinary, isn't it? And the almost funny thing about all of this is that Keir Starmer and his allies, France and others, don't realise how ridiculous they sound. I mean, I was thinking to myself, you know, when we were battling Islamic State with the Americans and with the Iraqi and Kurdish forces a few years ago, the Battle of Mosul was condemned by Amnesty International because up to 40,000 civilians were killed. We were bombing them from the air. The Americans were bombing them from the air. They went in. Amnesty talked about indiscriminate munitions and wide blast zones and all the rest of it. Imagine if the Israelis would have said, whoa, 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 OK, this is appalling. Britain, this has got to stop. We're going to recognise the Islamic State unless you withdraw and stop bombing civilians. Imagine how that would have felt from our point of view. It's just so deeply patronising of Britain and the European powers to take this perspective where they've got no dog in the game. We don't have any security threats on our own shores from Hamas just over the border. They're not, lobbing rockets in, taking our citizens hostage. And yet the danger is that, in a way, we're facing a version of the same threat in the Manchester Arena bombing, on the streets of London, and all the other terror attacks that we have faced. I mean, let's not forget that, as you said, we in Israel are fighting the same fight. On October the 7th, British citizens were taken hostage. Emily Damari, famously, that Spurs fan. British people were killed, have lost their lives since at the hands of Hamas. It's a jihadi enemy just like the Islamic State that wishes to kill us as well as kill the Jews and the Israelis. Israel is just first in the firing line. And if we continue to forget who our enemies are and begin to work for our enemies against ourselves, I'm afraid we haven't got much long left.
Let's see, because you're a very intelligent man and very erudite and brilliant grasp of language. I try and do my best. And this is a very difficult subject to navigate. It shouldn't be. We should be able to talk about it freely and openly, but we all struggle when we have to talk about it, which is, to me, the root of all of this. Is the keystone of the whole conversation we're having, which is fundamentally the level of threat to Western civilization, to our culture, that Islam poses. And this is really, to me, at the heart of all of this, because at the heart of all of this is a suggestion that because France and because the UK have significant Muslim populations who have suffered at the hand of terrorism, and people might go, well, you know, you invaded those countries, colonialism and all the rest of it. But the fundamental problem is our suspicion, I would imagine, is shared that the governments of France and the governments of the United Kingdom are going ahead and doing this because either they want the votes from the Muslim bloc, or they're worried about a reaction from certain extremists if they do not. But at the same time, there are people like you, like me, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but perhaps you as well, that say, well, look, you know, a religion that advocates that women are shameful if they don't cover their hair, a religion that advocates that Jews should be killed, a religion that advocates that you can actually essentially wipe out your enemy if they do not convert. Now, people say, no, Islam doesn't do that. There are moderate Muslims and all the rest of it. And I'm not an expert in the Quran to have those sorts of theological discussions. But we know that there are certain elements that are deeply incompatible with our own civilization and our own culture. And yet we really struggle to have that conversation. And I take from the political reaction to October the 7th and Starmer's decision to do that, he's not just making it more difficult to have that conversation, he's sort of compounding everything. He's actually demonstrating almost that the tail is wagging the dog.
Yeah, I mean, in my view, what we're seeing really is a generational or multi-generational struggle for the soul of Islam and the Islamic world and what it's going to be in the coming decades. Because you do have countries such as the United Arab Emirates and other Gulf countries that are liberal, that are relatively liberal. I'm talking about in some ways, not in their observance of their faith, but in their attitude towards the West. They're friendly to the West, and they actually are stronger against jihadi extremism than we are. They've banned, for example, the Muslim Brotherhood from their countries, from the UAE, from Egypt, from Jordan, and etc., because they understand that the Muslim Brotherhood, which Nigel Farage pledged to ban if he comes to power in Britain, is the fundamental source of extremism and jihadism, not the only one, but the main one in the world. Now, the effect of them banning that organisation in the Gulf and elsewhere has been that it's moved its headquarters, its base of operations, to the West, in particular to Britain. And so the source of Islam or Muslim communities that we're largely facing here is in the grip of the extremism of the Muslim Brotherhood that run a great many of the mosques, that run a great many of the youth groups, that threaten retaliation against anybody if they integrate too much or if they stray from the fundamentalist line imposed by the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, there were more condemnations of October the 7th from the United Arab Emirates than there were from Muslims in Britain, Muslim figures in Britain. And the reason is it's dominated by this extremist form of Islam. So what I would like to see, as Nigel Farage has pledged, and as my book argues very strongly, is the Muslim Brotherhood and other extremist organisations to be banned from Britain and from the West, to be combated, to be eradicated ideally, stamped out, which would then allow space for Muslims who do agree with us and our way of life and want to adapt Islam within a British context to express their views more openly. There are a few who speak up for Israel, not very many, but we need more of those. They're being silenced by the extremists. So what we need is that kind of approach where we are being completely ruthless with stamping out extremism, much stronger than we've ever been before, and yet also embracing those good... I mean, let's not forget, a great many Muslims fought for this country in World War I and World War II, as my Jewish grandfather did in D-Day. That means something, that means something. And I think that we need to find a way to create a future with the reforming, moderate, sort of forward-looking elements of Islam, which are in the minority, certainly in Britain, and get rid of the extremists at the same time. That's really the hardest task that that we're going to face.
I'm just going to pick up on that, actually, because that's, before I let you go, that interests me. Like, as somebody, when I lived in Ghana, for instance, I lived in a part of Accra called Dokuman, which is the Muslim part, and I've worked in Pakistan, and I've lived in Kenya, all with significant Muslim populations. Kenya has its own issues with extremism. Ghana, by and large, apart from right in the north, tends to dodge it. So I totally agree with you that there are, without doubt, a large number of Muslims who are more than happy to rub up alongside Western values and Christian values. A lot of Muslims actually look at Christianity as a cousin religion. But I just want to pick up on one thing where you say you actually think those Muslims in the UK are the minority.
I would say probably so. I mean, if you look at a lot of the studies coming out of the Muslim community, I mean, look, let's put it another way. Polls, when you're dealing with a community that is largely controlled by a sinister, violent jihadi gang, which is the Muslim Brotherhood, either covertly, overtly, by influence, by brainwashing, it's difficult to know what they really think because they can't speak freely in response to pollsters. Some of them might have instincts that these guys are wrong and maybe we should be more supportive of Britain and Jews and Israel, but even they suppress those instincts because they're not allowed to think them, and we're familiar with that from wider society. Sometimes you're not allowed to say something or think something, so it gets repressed. So it's difficult to know exactly where the centre of gravity of the Muslim community lies, and I think that the first step to all of this is to ban the Muslim Brotherhood, ban the other extremist groups, there are others, from Britain, begin to get rid of them, and then see what happens. And obviously we need a much more rigorous immigration policy and all the rest of it, and we need to demand that people assimilate much more. But ultimately, I mean, Israel is a great example. Just before on the final point, Israel's a great example because there's obviously problems in Israel with regard to integration and social division, but there are a great many Muslims there who died alongside Jews on October the 7th, who rescued Jews on October the 7th, who fight for Israel in the IDF, who stood up against jihadism very clearly and against Hamas. Israel's got a strong, proud story of selfhood to tell, and Muslims can get on board with that. We need to find that selfhood as well, that we know who we are again. We want you here to integrate if you're going to do so, and if not, off you go.
There you go. Wise words indeed. Couldn't agree more. Jake, thank you ever so much for coming on the programme once again. Right, let's take a short break now. After the break, I'm going to be joined by one of my all-time favourites. I love him so much. Is Mr. Trevor Kavanagh. Don't go anywhere.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Now, as billed, we're joined by the brilliant former political editor of The Sun, Mr. Trevor Kavanagh. Hello there, Trev. How you doing?
Hi there. Very well indeed, thank you.
I must admit, yesterday's conf put a bit of a spring in my step. I did rather enjoy the dressing down that the leader of the free world gave our Prime Minister, particularly on immigration. That's not going to change the way Sir Keir Starmer plans to do anything, though, is it?
Well, I don't think that they are in any tune in any sort of way at all on the subject. I mean, what Donald Trump has done from the moment he started his second term is to crack down on those borders, and he has cut the number of illegal immigrants in America by 1.6 million. Meanwhile, here we are struggling to get a one-for-one in and out system set up by Starmer with France, and it's not working even at that rate. Meanwhile, in the same period of time, 50,000 illegal immigrants have come across the channel by boat.
Why do you think it is? I mean, look, I always argue that anything could be done, anything and everything could be done to stop what is clearly a crisis embracing Europe. Parliaments get to make laws, break laws, amend laws, leave institutions. Parliament gets to determine what their armed forces do, whether if they send their troops into the theatre of war in a foreign country. The idea that European governments are totally unable to tackle this, either independently or together, to me, just doesn't seem to bear out. What's the point then in actually having politicians and prime ministers if they're not able to determine what is best for their nation and put those particular actions in place? So I've got to wonder, what on earth is going on? Why do we seem to have in Europe, my eyes caught the screen seeing François Hollande, apparently in France, banging on about the far right, it's so dangerous. Why do we seem to have a collective of extreme global socialists running Europe who seem to be hell-bent on preventing this crisis from being dealt with? I don't get it.
Well, I think Jake Wallace-Simpson, who you interviewed just now, put it graphically that we are in awe for some reason which bewilders most of us to the migrant population from countries that in many cases wish us harm. Now, as he stressed, and so did you, there are hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of our Muslim population who want nothing to do with extremism. They don't want to do anything but get along with the British society as a whole and help engage in the economy and the social fabric of Britain. But you only need a tiny minority of those 6 million to cause real trouble. And we've seen around the world throughout history how a small number of troublemakers can wield power very successfully and eventually take over. And you have a Labour government which actually relies in many constituencies on the Muslim vote, and the Muslim people in those constituencies who seek election are increasingly assertive, bordering on aggressive.
But you would think when you're a politician, your calling is to protect your nation, not to just go, well, I need the numbers to get into power. They've lost that vote anyway. That vote has splintered anyway. But even if we're not talking about terrorists and ne'er-do-wells and criminals and people who want to enter the black market, it is quite clear that some people just don't really belong in the Western world. They're not from backgrounds and communities that... It's not even that they don't share our cultural mores or our language. You know, as someone who's lived around the world, I can tell you right now that someone in Nairobi in Kenya has very little in common with a tribesman in the Masai Mara, and it's the same country. And we hear time and again of incidents taking place. Another thing happening in Epping, again, poor old Epping, a homeless asylum seeker, so apparently he's not in the Bell Hotel. Lord knows what he's doing here or where he is. Has been wandering around a school there. Staff had to come, escort him off the premises. He's already wanted for failing to turn up at Wimbledon Magistrates Court for an alleged public order-related offence. And there he is, knocking about, acting unusually, entering the school grounds, having to be asked to leave. And you think to yourself, why is this human being here in the first place? He might come from a terrible place. There might be dreadful things happening back at home in his own country. But the solution isn't to pluck these people out of their own little hellholes and just chuck them into the UK.
Absolutely not. I mean, I think you made an error, if I may say so, at the beginning when you said that the first duty of members of Parliament is the national interest. It is not. It is saving their seats, in other words, their own backsides.
It shouldn't be, is what I'm saying. You know, I think you're right. I think you're right. I wish politicians were not so venal. I wish they were more sacrificial and dutiful in the way they comported themselves.
I'm only teasing you. The simple fact is, I mean, I don't know if you're probably too young to remember, but about 15 years ago, I was booted off the Independent Press Standards Organization for writing about what I described as the Muslim problem. Well, that's an intolerable thing to say, possibly even to this day. So I'm being very careful with my words, otherwise both of us will get the sack.
Yeah.
But the simple fact is that we have an alien culture, no matter how you like to describe it, it is an alien culture which wants to assert itself in the British system and to dispense with our history as a Christian country, a democratic country, and indeed a free country. And they will stop at nothing until they achieve that. And they've already stopped at nothing in that direction. I mean, the terrorist attacks here in Britain have, in their own way, been as ghastly and abominable as the Hamas attack on Israel in October the 7th, as I think Donald Trump pointed out.
I think it's so upsetting that we can't talk about this because we fear for our professions, we fear for we fear retribution, because it is talking about history. We've seen from Barbarossa, the Crusades, the Spanish Inquisition. We've seen what's happened in Lebanon. I've lived all over the world and seen what's happened in other countries who say to, have said to me, blimmin' heck, Britain, you can't be caught napping on this one. And yet when it is so critical to protecting us, our children, our children's children, that we are being essentially handcuffed. We are being gagged on this, and it is such a critical conversation to have. It really is concerning to me. Again, Epping, poor old Epping's always at the middle of everything at the moment. But this is a Somalian migrant who's been living at the Bell Hotel. He has been given the right to stay in Britain. Kadar Mohammed, he's going to be leaving the hotel next month. He's being moved to Bradford in Yorkshire after winning his asylum battle. 24 years old, travelled from Somalia to the UK, and he said many, many more will follow suit. Now, I don't know much about why he's been given asylum. It doesn't actually explain to me, but to be honest, it could be anything. He could have decided he's gay. He could decide he's now Christian. He could just say Somalia is poor. He could say that Somalia is constantly at war with itself, which it is. I know this, but I also know for a fact when it comes to some of those countries in that region of Africa that it's chocker full of terrorists. Absolutely brimming with terrorism and extremism. And if it isn't brimming with terrorism and extremism, it's also got a lot of people who just don't remotely view the world through the same prism as we do. And here he is saying, look, loads more from Somalia are going to come. I almost sort of say, who can blame them? And we just have a government who either don't get it, which I fail to believe, or for some reason want this to happen. Can you make sense of it any more than I can? Is it that they want it to happen? Does Sir Keir Starmer actually want to see Britain and British values destroyed?
I do believe that Keir Starmer fundamentally disagrees with the idea of national borders. I think he does believe entirely in the European Union view of free movement, which is the same thing. And that free movement must extend not just to European citizens, but basically to the whole world, as we've discovered with our International Health Service. It is open to all comers. But this is a serious and dangerous problem, and we've discussed this several times before. This is a problem that really affects the whole of Europe. And we have to be grateful for America and for Donald Trump in actually taking a stand against it. And I think that his point that illegal mass immigration destroys a country from within is an incredibly, for Donald Trump, a very great definition of the problem that confronts us. Not only are we importing the problems domestic problems from countries like Eritrea and Somalia and the rest of them, but we're also importing the division which is fundamental within Islam of the tension between Shia and Sunni Muslims. And it is such a complicated jigsaw of tensions that it is impossible to resolve by any sensible government. I mean, I do believe actually that if we did try to now put things on an even keel and deport those who are the biggest troublemakers, who have risen to considerable influence and power within the framework of our local politics, then we would have a civil war, simply because they would begin to assert themselves, as I say, in an aggressive way.
Do you know, it's interesting. I actually interviewed a self-professed Islamist for my Substack, a very well-known one, actually. And he explained to me, we sat there and had a very long conversation, and he said, Alex, at the end of the day, Muslims believe primarily in the Ummah. They are Muslims first. They don't believe in a nation state. Wherever they are in the world, it doesn't matter. It's a patch of ground. It's somewhere where you can access resources. It's somewhere where you can withdraw money from the state. Our primary job is to spread our religion because we believe the whole world should be Islamic. And they tell us this. They say it out loud. And I still don't understand why our politicians just seem to think, oh, they're just the same of us. We can all live happily ever after. It baffles me. It really does.
You should ask Malcolm Pearson, Lord Pearson, onto your show.
Yes,
I think that he will quite succinctly define the problem, which is that the Muslim leaders in this country, those who are spreading and proselytizing the Muslim faith, believe they don't really need terrorism anymore to get their message across. They are doing it through the ballot box and the womb.
Exactly.
That is an expression that was accepted by a leading Muslim member of the House of Lords. And this is the problem we face. While we sit there like frogs in a saucepan, the water's boiling. In fact, I think we're already hard-boiled.
I think you're right, Trev. I think you're right. So I could talk about this with you all day. You're brilliant. I adore you. Trevor Cavan, a former political editor of The Sun. We're going to take a little break now. Before we go to the top of the hour, though, we're going to take your calls. 0344499 1000 is the number to dial. Back after this.
He spent all his time attacking those things, and this very formal, almost theatrical performance of the two of them, which is just completely meaningless.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, right, let's hit up the phone lines and speak to Mike, who's in Stoke-on-Trent. Hello there, Mike.
Hello, my lovely. Very quick one. Mr. Trump, he made our beloved, whatever you want to call him, look like a right wazzock. He really showed him up. But when you were talking with Trevor just, you said about terrorists and one thing and another, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, definition of a terrorist to me is somebody who is a threat to the country or to the people of the country.
Or somebody who instills terror in the hearts of the population that makes people within a country feel like they have to live in fear. Are you about to define our Prime Minister as such?
Well, no, I was actually thinking more like the Labour government.
All of them. Chuck them all in. Prescribe the party.
Get them all prescribed and have done with it. I mean, we're a joke. I don't know. I mean, I've seen on a couple of other medias this morning, 160 have already landed at Dover, and they reckon there could be another 400 in the Channel.
Oh, I tell you what's even more alarming. I was listening to a report as well this morning, suggesting now is an interview with a people trafficker saying this isn't going to stop us at all. In fact, we're now commissioning 18-foot ribs to be made. 18 foot. The longest dinghy that we've ever had cross the channel, I think, is 14 foot, right? Yeah. And that had about 150 people. They're now building a sort of inflatable version of a cruise ship to ferry people over from France. I mean, this isn't going to curtail anything at all. Even if it was one in, one out, nobody's being deported. So we've still got a load of unknown randoms coming over. We don't know who they are. We don't know what their intention is. We don't really know the mettle of their pastures or what exists within their hearts. It is just absolutely balmy. It is so dangerous. It is so dangerous.
Well, with that thought in mind, I've seen the other thing you did this morning, the lurker caught inside the school.
The lurker! I know. I mean, look, he might be just a really nice human who's escaped a war zone and is a bit balmy, wandering around, trying to find some shelter, some food or whatever. Or maybe a place to go and crouch under a bush if he's homeless. But the point is, why are you here? Why are you here? Look, I am all up for the United Kingdom when you've got desperately poor places in Africa going and actually doing things to help them alleviate that poverty, right? As someone who spent a long time living in Africa, I tell you what they need. They could do, say, for instance, somewhere like Kenya. Our company's building a big tea processing plant over there. All the tea we have on supermarket shelves comes from Kenya, right? Pretty much all of it. And yet what happens is there's a big tea auction in Mombasa. All the leaves are picked by people trapped in agrarian poverty. That again gets shipped out to Eastern Europe to be processed and put in bags, and it's sold back in the UK market. Because we're not allowing factories to be built in Kenya, which one of the reasons is because the EU, with their whole, oh no, we're not going to put tariffs on everything, but they put a load of non-tariff barriers on. So the factories would have to have, I don't know, equal employment of men and women, sick leave, maternity, but, you know, stuff like that, which they couldn't frankly afford. It essentially means that you've got a load of people who are stuck working in the midday sun for pittance, and all the money is made elsewhere, when we could actually help boost their economies by trading with them properly, investing in those countries properly, digging wells, helping them to electrify, building roads. That's what China's doing. And then in return, China gets access to all the resources. We have massively dropped the ball on this one for decades, Mike, for decades. China's getting all the world's resources, the rare earth minerals, and what are we getting? We're getting the ill-educated people who don't share our cultural mores, and we now have to take care of them. It doesn't work out for us. It's not in the national interest, and frankly, it's not in the interest of countries that we could be helping. Mike, thank you ever so much for your call, my darling. Right, we've got to take another short break now, and then we're going to plunge ourselves straight into the final hour of the programme. So don't go anywhere, put the kettle on, and I'll see you just after this.
Majesty. Melania and I are deeply grateful to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. The phrase special relationship, seen from American eyes, the word special does not begin to do it justice. We're joined by history and fate, and by love and language. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you.
Security remains
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. I was just having a chit-chat because I got my mate in here and I was like, do you want to go for a drink after the show? And I said, Alex, we're back. I was like, oh gosh, better get on and do my job rather than think about whether the sun's over the yard arm somewhere on planet Earth. Because I'm pleased to say that I have got a very good friend joining me in the studio because he is in town and we don't get to enjoy him as often as I wish we could. It is the fantastic Nile Gardner. No, I mean, the audience knows you anyway, but Heritage Foundation, genius, Brit who now lives in America. You're a bit like a brain in a vat over in Washington, D.C. You're like the right-wing version of a sort of Greta Thunberg. In America, they're like, here he comes with all of his knowledge and his foresight. But it's really interesting speaking to you because you're a Brit, you know this country, you love this country, but you live in America and you work very closely with the Republican Party, big part of the policy making for the Trump administration 2.0. And so actually having you here to talk us through the lot of it is just, you know, it's fantastic. Let's start off with, well, we'll play our little clip first because this is the Sun's political editor, Jack Elsham, asking Trump and Starmer about migration.
Legal migration is at record levels in Britain. The Prime Minister is trying to tackle that. What advice would you give to the man standing next to you on trying to stop illegal migration in Britain? I
told the Prime Minister I would stop it, and it doesn't matter if you call out the military, it doesn't matter what means you use, but it's going to destroys countries from within. And we're actually now removing a lot of the people that came into our country. It's a very hard chore. We were given a very, very bad hand. Millions of people came in from prisons and mental institutions. We have to remove them.
Jack, let me just deal with the question of returns because this is obviously an issue we're taking incredibly seriously. We struck the returns arrangement with France and notwithstanding the challenges to that scheme, which you've seen in the last few days, a flight went off at 6:15 this morning, successfessly returning someone under that scheme. It can be done. It was done early this morning, so I can confirm that that flight went. It went successfully, and I'm pleased about that. Now we need to ramp that up at scale, which was always envisaged under the scheme, but it's very important that we have been able to prove that the proof of concept.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, Donald Trump has often done this to other world leaders, called them out on things before. But this is him calling out Donald Trump on how this is Donald Trump calling out Sir Keir Starmer on how Sir Keir Starmer is managing his own domestic affairs, not calling him out on a matter of geopolitics, not calling him out on something that's happening externally, but basically saying, I love Britain. Are you sure you do? Because you are not doing a good job as Prime Minister. And what I want to ask you, actually, is when are the gloves going to come off properly? Because my understanding is the Trump administration do not like that man.
Well, firstly, Alex, it's great to be here. Wonderful to see you've got a fantastic show. And I'm sure a lot of people in America love your show as well. Alex, I mean, it's been an extraordinary week, and I've been on the ground at Windsor throughout this week, and I do think President Trump is extremely happy with how everything went. It's been a very successful visit. And as you pointed out, Alex, President Trump called out Keir Starmer this week on the whole mass migration crisis, how to deal with all the boats coming over to the UK. In fact, Donald Trump would sort out the migration crisis in the UK in about a day. he's already secured the US border. 11 million illegals flooded over the border under Joe Biden, and Trump has completely secured the border today. That's a massive achievement. He could easily do that in the UK if he was leading the UK. Unfortunately, we've got far-left Keir Starmer as Prime Minister here. And it has to be said, Keir Starmer is not exactly a very popular figure in Washington at the moment.
Right. This is what I want to drill down on, because, you know, having you and I sort of, you know, you do lots of American media all the time. Every now and then when there are things happening in Britain, the Americans want me to talk to their media, so I do a fair amount. And it's for people listening, our British audience listening, I just want to reassure you guys, actually, that America is talking about us. They know what's going on. They're deeply worried by what's going on. It's not just Elon Musk. It is a huge amount of American politicians on the right. It is American news channels on the right. It is the American public on the right. We're not alone. They're not going to let us sink. They're not going to allow a global socialist government turn us into a dystopian hellhole. And that is what Trump is alluding to, standing on the podium, saying publicly, you've got to sort this out.
Yes.
It is tearing your country apart. So I want to ask you again, look, we know the American administration, they might think Keir Starmer's an affable enough chap when they meet him, but they don't care for his politics at all. And so, you know, they've only been in government 1 year. When are the gloves going to come off? We don't know what happened behind the scenes at Chequers. Neither of us would have been privileged to overhear that. But we as the British public who are thinking, please, can you actually intervene at this point? Because this man is uncontrollable. He's not listening. It's not in his DNA to do any of the things that Donald Trump's done. It's not going to happen. So are the gloves ever going to come off? Do you think there's ever, can you envisage, I mean, J.D. Vance is used more as the attack dog, isn't he? Could you ever envisage an America who turns around to Britain and actually says, if you don't do these things, or indeed Europe, if you don't do these things, you're going to drag down Western civilization, and frankly, you're going to drag down us with you?
Yeah, I do think that is the way things are moving, because there is a deep concern within the White House, within the Trump presidency, with regard to what's happening in the UK and the whole of Europe. And the fear is that Western civilization, the roots of Western civilization, are under attack, frankly. And so what's happening here in the UK and across Europe is being closely followed. J.D. Vance has addressed it on a number of occasions, but also numerous US officials, and President Trump's weighed in a number of times also. I do think that in the coming months, Keir Starmer's socialist government is going to be increasingly challenged actually by the United States on multiple fronts.
Right.
So the key issues are going to be freedom of speech, the mass migration crisis, what's happening in Europe in terms of the assault on Western culture and Christianity. These are big issues. Also, what Keir Starmer is doing, calling for the creation and recognition of a Palestinian state, is absolutely insane. This is a gift to Hamas. This is strongly being opposed in Washington. Also, the whole net zero crazy climate agenda that Keir Starmer is advancing is absolutely anathema to the United States. And so on multiple fronts, you're going to see significant pressure being applied by Washington on the UK. And yes, the Americans care very deeply about what's happening here in Britain. They're closely following it. And just earlier this week, in fact, there was this case highlighted by the Free Speech Union of an American citizen living in the UK who was interrogated by the police over some comment she made on social media.
Which they didn't even tell her what it was.
They didn't tell her what it was. She's a cancer patient. And this was truly Orwellian stuff. And that already is being highlighted across social media in the United States. I've urged the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, to intervene over this, because this is an absolute insult, frankly, to the American people. For an American citizen to be interrogated over her tweets, actually, on British soils, absolutely unacceptable. I do think you are going to see the US intervening on the freedom of speech issue in the UK, because it directly affects also the United States and US citizens living here in the UK. But also, frankly, the British government would like to restrict what US social media companies can say, actually.
So it's interesting. So people think Donald Trump is a blunt tool. I think he's actually far more sophisticated and intelligent than he lets on or presents himself. But I see what's going on now as extremely subtle and genius statecraft from America. In the same way, I think they're treating us the same way as they're treating Russia, and I'll tell you why. So the way that America thinks it's going to actually be able to conquer Putin is by undermining the economic model, by doing drill, baby, drill, and therefore bringing down the price of gas and oil, which will suddenly prevent the Kremlin from being able to successfully fund their war machine. They're asking us to do the same thing. So we're then not buying fossil fuels from other countries who are buying it from Russia and then refining it. And I think that a couple of things are happening here. The setting up of US-UK nuclear projects is meant to undermine that. Also, with Drill Baby Drill, I think America's going to offer to export liquefied natural gas to us when it comes to Christmas time. The lights might go out. We currently get that stuff largely from countries like Qatar. And I think that will come with conditions. Now, in the same way as well, they're actually fighting off Russia in Ukraine by saying we want rare earth minerals in Ukraine. We're going to build mines in order to access them, but then that becomes American property. That becomes something that then is our interest, and we will defend it. So if Russia thinks they can come into Ukraine, we're going to have American boots on the ground, be it private security or whatever, because those are going to be American-owned resources. I think building big tech centres in the UK is going to be doing much the same, because then if there's an issue with freedom of speech and something someone said on social media, well, guess where Microsoft will now have a headquarters? That's right, in the north of England. I actually see a lot of this as quite cleverly designed, subtle statecraft from America. I don't know whether you sort of think I'm barking up the wrong tree here.
Well, certainly I think Keir Starmer's behaving like Vladimir Putin over free speech in the UK, and that's for sure. And I do think that if you look at the US-UK trade agreement, the trade deal, which is a benefit of Brexit, I think that the US may attach provisions relating to free speech in the further negotiations, for this bill, and so I think that you're going to see sustained US pressure on the UK on multiple fronts, and it's because the United States really cares about the future of Britain. US conservatives care deeply about the future of Europe and the future of Western civilization, and they want to help save Britain, actually. And this is the reality. You mentioned President Trump earlier. I've met the president several times. He's highly intelligent. He's somebody who has a deep interest, actually, in developments in the UK and Europe. He cares deeply about what happens here in Britain. He's the most pro-British president of the modern era. And he absolutely adores the British monarchy, the royal family, and also the British people as well. I mean, this week, actually, was really... and he said this, one of the highlights of his life, actually, and a tremendous honour, the second state visit. So this is a president who genuinely cares about the future of the British people, because Keir Starmer, you can be sure, does not. The Labour government does not care about the future of the British people, actually. Right. But no. The American presidency actually does.
But Donald Trump functions as a businessman. He gets deals, and he uses deals as diplomacy. He uses this sort of these entrenchments and these intermingling of economies and interests as a way. It's almost, back in the day, a medieval king would get his daughter to marry the son of, a foreign king or something. What Trump seems to do is come up with business deals as a way of uniting two countries, but also as a way of having levers of power over them. Talking about the sort of things that may come as provisions of future trade deals and conditions that may be put upon the United Kingdom, I want to talk about something we've not really spoken about on this programme at all today, which is Trump prescribing Antifa, the anti-fascist movement, as dangerous terrorists, which needs to be done. It needs to be done. I know there are people going, right, you're saying to people, stop saying Nazis and far left and far right and fascist. But you will say far left. And I'm like, no, because the thing is, there might be a scattering of Nazis and skinheads and ne'er-do-well somewhere, but the far left really does exist. The far left really is mobilised. The far left also seems to have a huge amount of influence over mainstream politics. Do you think that something America might say to Britain down the line is, we've prescribed Antifa, you've got to do the same thing?
Yeah, I think that what President Trump is doing here is absolutely superb. He's taking action against terrorists, basically, and these Antifa terrorists and other far left movements. I mean, they're actually like Nazis themselves, really.
Well, let's not forget Nazis were, of course, the National Socialists.
Yeah, exactly.
They were far left.
They are National Socialists, basically, and President Trump is taking action against terrorists, and these are very dangerous individuals. And we saw what happened with regard to Charlie Kirk, a great man. And this is what we're up against right now. I'm very dangerous, frankly, fascistic terrorists, actually national socialists, really, who seek the destruction of the United States and Western civilization, but also the United Kingdom as well. And so what's happening in the United States should be a role model for what should happen in the UK, perhaps under the next government, because Keir Starmer is absolutely useless, really. I mean, Keir Starmer does nothing whatsoever to stand up to the far left, actually. In fact, he's often bowing down to the far left, actually. But President Trump is somebody who stands up for the American people, will not tolerate these terrorist movements operating, and you're going to see swift action against them.
Do you think that somewhere America, I mean, look, we know that the Donald has a good relationship with Nigel Farage. They must have looked at the sort of mood music in the UK and seen that the writing's on the wall and the writing says reform. I mean, certainly that is what various pollsters are now saying quite openly, and various psephologists. Do you think America might be thinking, actually, you know, the Trump administration, he's got one more term and you can never bind your successor? You know, as much as you might want to, as much as the Republicans might think, yes, I think we'll win again because the Democrats are in a mess. I mean, they are in a mess. Yeah. But you cannot guarantee that. And actually, the way to sort of put rocket fuel into the special relationship would be to have someone who is a natural ally of Donald Trump in number 10. And do you know if there are conversations in Republican circles saying, well, look, even if Farage does come in 2029, Donald Trump will have already left the White House and we don't know who Farage would then be working with in America. Let's hope that that situation is brought forward, because Nigel Farage at the Reform Conference said on stage he thinks an election is going to happen by 2027. He said that publicly. Now, the man doesn't say things publicly that often that he thinks is going to make him look like a fool. And as someone who knows him pretty well, very well, in fact, he's a brilliant reader of the political tea leaves and seems to sort of know how to read the runes like nobody else. Yes. And I've been wondering for some time, why did he say that?
Yeah, well, I do hope we're going to see an early general election in the UK. And this, you know, this socialist government right now is an absolute disaster. I hope the British people will be liberated as soon as possible from this ghastly far left government. So I absolutely hope that Nigel Farage is right. And recently, actually, I met Nigel Farage when he came over to visit, and also he testified before Congress. And I was sitting there actually during the hearing when he took on these Democrat members of Congress. Some of them exceedingly nasty, I have to say. And Nigel Farage did extremely well. He's somebody who's hugely popular, I would say, among US conservatives. Many view him as the Prime Minister in waiting. And he's an extremely talented and skillful politician, but also he's somebody who has deep affinity for the US-UK special relationship, loves America. And I think that the future of the special relationship would be very safe in his hands.
You almost feel as if there was sort of a Trump-Farage combination. It would be a bit like the Reagan-Thatcher years, where two people who are natural bedfellows could do so much together so quickly because they speak the same language, perhaps. Yes,
I really hope that we'll see an early UK general election, and there's a very good chance that the next president could be Vice President J.D. Vance, and who is somebody who loves the UK, and believes firmly in the importance of the US-UK special relationship. He recently holidayed in the Cotswolds, the most beautiful part of Britain,
he went to the Oxfordshire bit, though, Niall. The Gloucestershire one's the real one. The Oxfordshire bit's full of Londoners.
That is a great point, having grown up in Gloucestershire myself. So, I do think the future of the special relationship will be in great shape. And I am confident about the future.
I want to ask you about something that's happened both sides of the pond. It is, of course, on Sunday, the funeral of Charlie Kirk. Yes. I wonder if UK broadcasters are going to be live streaming it like they did the blimmin' funeral of George Floyd, where everything had to stop because they were playing that out. Something tells me they might show a couple of clips and that's it. But I think it's something that, do you know, that tragic, disgusting assassination. So many people on the left turned around and said, oh, he's an extremist. Oh, you know, he was terrible. Well, he had controversial views. He was incendiary. The BBC just casually saying that. And you just think, have you ever seen what he said? Because what he was saying was just Christianity.
Yes,
at the end of the day, a Christian has been killed for having Christian views and wanting to debate them, but being warm and open and generous of spirit and kind and compassionate. A Christian's been assassinated in Christendom for being a Christian. If this was a young imam right, standing there in jeans and a T-shirt with a microphone going, you know, we as Muslims don't believe that a man can marry a woman, or we believe in the sanctity of the unborn child, and then got shot. Blimmin' heck, there'd be knee-taking, armbands, protests, live streaming all the time. The BBC would never suggest that a young imam who doesn't believe that a man and a man can get married is an extremist. And you know, on the other side, let's actually look at something that was asked of Donald Trump about a broadcaster in America, because you've had the same problem in America with the reaction to Charlie Kirk's death. The woke mind virus has infected all of the West. And this is about Jimmy Kimmel, who frankly was just talking utter rot, which lost him his job. Let's have a look at Trump's reaction.
Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else, and he said a horrible thing about a great gentleman known as Charlie Kirk. And Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you know, you can call that free speech or not. He was fired for lack of talent.
Well, also, the fact of the matter is, Kimmel just stated a falsehood. He said that the perpetrator of that disgusting killing was actually part of the MAGA movement. He was not.
Yeah, it was a complete lie.
And this isn't about, you know, the big debate in America after the comments of Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, about limits to free speech, is nice because Americans treasure free speech. But there's a big difference between actually what is just absolutely false, and there's also one has to assume when someone disgraces their company. If I were to suddenly, I don't know, go goo goo gaga and take off all my clothes, I doubt I'll be invited back to present a show again, because I would have brought my company into disrepute. I mean, it's fair that Kimmel's gone, right?
Yes, I mean, I agree. I mean, this is it's a private company that has made a corporate decision after one of their key broadcasters made a flat-out lie, frankly, with sheer disinformation, and what he was suggesting is completely and utterly false, and and quite incendiary as well in many respects. And so ABC News took a decision as a private entity to remove him, and that's their right to do so. It's not a free speech issue. I think it's an issue of management of that organisation deciding that this particular individual, Jimmy Kimmel, had made comments that were hugely false and embarrassing for their corporation. So I think that's the reality. It's not a freedom of speech matter.
Have you got time to stay with us 10 more minutes, Niall?
Yeah, sure.
Well, do you know what? There you go. We're going to hold you hostage because how about we do this? I'm just ad-libbing. Sorry, everyone in the gallery is looking at me with like wide eyes. Let's keep Niall in here, and if you want to put a question to Niall, then call us 0344499 1000. That's after the break.
chance of Putin agreeing to a ceasefire and some sort of negotiations on a peace deal. And I guess Trump may be saying, well, what do you think about secondary tariffs on China and India? And I don't know, but you guys will find out in the media soon enough quite what position the British are going to take on that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, hello. Introducing a new section to the show. There's a big scramble in the gallery as they grabbed what I like to call an elephant's tampon to put in Niall's ear. They're really uncomfortable, those earpieces. I hope it doesn't, pop itself out of your lugger like it likes to with me. But we're going to do Ask Niall. Woo! Welcome to the hot seat. Let's speak to Samantha in Scunthorpe. Hello, Samantha.
Yeah, hi, Alex. Hi, Niall.
Hi.
Hi. This isn't specifically for you, Niall. Sorry, I'm
going to make him answer it anyway because I feel a little bit rebellious today.
Okay, so I'm sorry if you've already raised this because I'm working, so I'm in and out of the show. I'm over and above my paid hours. Can I have before anybody wonders why I'm listening to the radio?
You're allowed to do that.
Yeah. So what I wanted to ask was that regarding Trump. First of all, I love that he loves this country. That really. Yeah, that makes me happy. But regarding and I know you maybe haven't mentioned this, the Chagos deal, that's the one thing that I can't quite understand, and I wanted to know what your opinion of it is. I know the US president can have influence, but it would seem on the face of it that he really didn't do much about it, and this is very bad for the UK. I'm puzzled as to why. Why do you think?
Very interesting. Now, actually, Niall is the perfect person to ask because he will know a lot more about this and how the Republicans are approaching this than I do. But I can tell you something, Samantha, where I had the privilege to be at a dinner with Mike Pompeo, who is former Secretary of State in the previous Trump administration. He is extremely concerned about Chagos. He can see what's going on and he thinks it's disastrous. And there are conversations taking place as far as I'm aware. That's all I know, but you will know a lot more, Niall.
Yep, sure. Firstly, Samantha, thanks very much for that question. And what a lovely voice Samantha has as well.
I know.
And Samantha, you've raised a very important issue because I have actually raised this issue directly with the White House and with the Trump administration. I've strongly urged, actually, President Trump to intervene over this issue. There is still time because Parliament has to go through all the parliamentary votes on this. I think there have been 2 votes in the House of Commons so far, and then the Lords has to confirm it as well. So there's still time for the United States to actually intervene against the Chagos deal because this is an incredibly dangerous deal.
Really?
In fact, I think it's the worst deal by a British Prime Minister in many, many decades. It's a surrender. It's a big win for communist China. Mauritius is increasingly a very, very close ally of Beijing. The Chagos Islands are the home of Diego Garcia, which is a vital US strategic base in the Indo-Pacific. In my view, within a few years, Communist China will simply take over the Chagos Islands at the invitation of Mauritius, and this will be the end of the Diego Garcia base, which is a home actually of US B-2 bombers. Right. And so there's still time for the United States to intervene against what the British government's doing.
What could they do if they intervened?
Yeah. Well, all it would take would be for President Trump to weigh in and say this is a ghastly, horrible deal, which it is, and to tell Keir Starmer to just back off because fundamental US strategic interests are at stake.
Why has he not done it already, though? Because this has got... I think this is why Samantha's scratching her head, and indeed why I scratch my head. And it's amazing. Aren't we privileged, can I just say, ladies and gentlemen, to have sitting with us a man who advises the American government on things such as foreign affairs, particularly regarding Europe? It's not very often we get to hear straight from the horse's mouth, if you will.
Yeah, sorry, Niall. I'm sorry. I missed that. I didn't realise that you would be exactly the person.
Oh, you don't... It's all right. You don't have to be the sort of almanac of every single guest and what they do. But it has surprised me, because we are talking about an American military base. Why is this not sort of come to light before? Why was America's initial response just like... Because I remember when Trump was asked about it before, and he sort of went, well, it seems like a good deal to me. And you thought, what?
Yeah, I don't think the president actually was had been fully briefed on exactly what was at stake. Basically, the State Department, in fact, rubber-stamped this, but the White House never issued a statement actually supporting it.
Right.
And this is very important. Now,
why did the State Department rubber stamp it?
Well, Lord Mandelson and the British and the Foreign Office launched a huge campaign actually over Chagos in Washington, which I witnessed firsthand. And they basically told the Trump administration, nothing to worry about here, move along. Nothing to see here.
How interesting.
And I think that certainly Mandelson led the whole campaign here, actually.
I wonder if there are people. I wonder if there are people in our security services who look at that asset and go, "This is so dangerous." Oh, look, some emails have come to light just before the state visit. Kaboom, Mandelson gone.
And yeah, interesting timing. And so the British government launched probably its biggest PR offensive in Washington in decades to sell what is the worst deal, I think, in modern British history, actually. And Keir Starmer has knifed the British people on the back, and he's also knifing the Americans on the back as well. I mean, it's an absolute disgrace. It's a surrender.
Fascinating stuff. Well, there you go, Samantha. I think that's your question well and truly answered. We've got to go to break now. Niall, I think you should just, take over my job. You've got the inside line, my friend.
You're far too brilliant for me to take over, Alex.
Don't be silly.
You need to stay where you are.
Don't be silly. Samantha, thank you ever so much for your call. Really enjoyed that. Thank you to Nile Gardner as well. Right, we're going to take a short break now. When I come back, I'm joined by that old curmudgeon and misanthrope, Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan. Don't go anywhere.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
There was a newsline in there somewhere, wasn't there, folks? Fascinating. So what you need to understand is Nile Gardner, who works for Heritage Foundation, who worked very closely with the Trump administration, is their expert on foreign affairs, particularly European foreign affairs. He goes around various parts of Europe speaking to governments, heads of state, and directly advises the administration. And he said, I think it's important that we actually sum up what we just heard there. He has advised President Trump about the dangers of Chagos. The State Department essentially just rubber-stamped it. And actually America is worried about it. And he believes America is now going to intervene and probably tell the UK not to hand Chagos over to Mauritius. And guess who was the person working like a busy little bee over in Washington, D.C., trying to force the Chagos deal through? One Peter Mandelson. Look what happened to Peter Mandelson just before the state visit. You joining some dots here? Yeah, me too. I think there's a newsline in there somewhere, folks. Right, let's move on to well, what's going to be a rambunctious, pugilicious, delicious part of the show, because we're joined by misanthropist misanthropist. I can't speak now. Misanthropic Kevin O'Sullivan, who is a misery chief. There you go. That will have to do, because I can wrap my tongue around those words. How are you, my darling?
Yes, I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to be miserable.
Right. Now, I know you wanted to speak to me about this one yesterday, but I was so busy bimbling about.
Talk about this.
We've got to talk about this. You tell our wonderful audience what we need to talk about.
This is the story. I was desperate to get you on last night because I think it's right up your street. This is, in my view, ground zero of the insanity of our migrant crisis. This is the story of an Egyptian man, a 42-year-old guy who broke into the country in April 2023. We, of course, did all the usual. We started paying for all his food, his accommodation, his dentists, his doctors, his lawyers, fighting his case to stay. And we put him in the very nice Hilton Hotel in Ealing to the west of London, a very nice part of West London. He was this, and then last November, after enjoying our hospitality for so long, he headed into central London to Hyde Park. And at 9 p.m. one night, brutally raped a poor young girl walking home after a night out, pulled her into some bushes and ruthlessly, brutally raped her. This week, he has been sentenced to 8.5 years at Southwark Crown Court. When the judge sentenced him, he said to him, I can see that you have no conception of just how serious your crime is. You do not seem to understand that. In other words, here we are, another guy from the Middle East, from a different culture, who doesn't understand the seriousness of rape. Now, that is bad enough. So he's beginning his jail sentence. What do we learn the following day after this horrific story emerges? Trust me, you wouldn't imagine that this story could get worse, would you? Well, it damn well can. We learned the following day that for 17 months, the Home Office has been pondering whether or not to allow this man's asylum application. Shall we let him stay or shall we not? Now, guess what was on the table while they were pondering this very difficult question?
Oh, might it be the fact that they knew he was a bomb maker?
Let me finish, Alex. They knew from day one that this guy was a convicted Islamic terrorist. He was convicted in Egypt of being a bomb maker for Islamic terrorists. So he's an Islamic terrorist. And for 17 months, our officials, the Home Office, couldn't make up their mind whether or not he should be staying. And by the way, he just then decided, I'll nip up to Hyde Park and rape someone.
So here we go. Here we go, Kev.
The insanity, Alex.
I'm about to do it. I'm about to do it, son, because you know I'm a bit of a Tonka toy. Wind me up and then watch me go. So here we go. I'm going to go on this. Why on God's earth is a man who was making bombs in Egypt for the Muslim Brotherhood, one of the most extremist Islamist organisations that has terrorised the world, that most Islamic countries ban. This man was put in prison in Egypt for 8 years. When he comes out of prison, he runs off to Turkey, doesn't he? And then from there, he makes his way illegally over to the country. He breaks into the country to claim asylum. The Home Office know he's a bomb maker. They know he's a terrorist. But instead of saying, we don't want the likes of you over here, sunshine, oh no, they give him luxury accommodation in a hotel in the middle of London. So I thought to myself, well, maybe they think at least we can keep some eyes on. We can't actually put him in prison because he's not done anything in the UK yet. We can't deport him to Egypt because international law says he might actually end up going back to prison there, or so on and so forth. So at least you sit there and think, maybe they're going to be observant of this character, because Lord knows he might be going down to Screwfix to buy a massive bag of nails. He might be ordering fertiliser online. He might be making a bomb vest. He might be sitting there planning how he's going to blow up a classroom of little English girls. So you would hope that they might watch this person to make sure he's not going to do wicked things to our country, in our country, while we pay to put him up in a hotel. But clearly, no. There wasn't eyes on this terrorist, because he was able to wander freely around and go and rape a woman in a park in the middle of London. This isn't just balmy. This is suicidal. This is sheer negligence. This is one of the most disgusting stories I've ever read in the newspaper. Ever.
I agree with you more, Alex. As I say, ground zero of the insanity. And my message to Keir Starmer and the new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, is stick your one in, one out nonsense where the sun don't shine. Start dealing with this in a sensible way. This is absolute madness. A convicted Islamic terrorist bomber, a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they let him come to this country. We give him all the hospitality we possibly can, and he's allowed to wander around. I mean, come on, never mind one in, one out. Start acting sensibly. Start acting properly.
This is the Home Office. This is these are the levers of state actually being responsible for potentially killing people, for a woman being raped because they knew he was a wrong-un. They knew he was somebody who was dangerous to the public. They knew full well, while they sat there for a year and a half, twiddling their thumbs, wondering what they should do with him, while we pay for him to be having a wonderful life, living it large in the centre of London. How many more, Kev? How many more people are the same as Abdul Rahman Adnan Abu Layla? Because I'll tell you this, from things I'm hearing, it's plenty. Because do you know the sort of people who want to break into a country illegally? People who want to do illegal things. People who want to come to the country and work don't throw their passports into the sea. They don't pay international people traffickers. They're not part of crime syndicates. They're not getting false documents from terrorist organisations. People who want to come and do the right thing go about getting into the country the right way. So that won't be the first story of this kind. It's definitely not the last. This is going on. And as far as I'm concerned, if one single person from one of these boats that the taxpayer is paying to have in a hotel or be put in a house commits a crime, be it sexual assault, be it rape, be it murder, or worse still, a terror atrocity, because all of these things right now are seeming to me like they're going to be inevitable, the responsibility stops with the government.
Let me just stress again to the audience, imagine this, folks, imagine this. This comes across the desk of civil servants at the Home Office. They know that this guy who broke into our country illegally is a convicted Islamic terrorist bomber and a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. And what is their response? They look at it, they go, shall we let him stay? Or well, let's just put him in a hotel, let him wander around for 17 months while we try to make up their mind. It's not just madness. It is just barking insanity and hopelessness and uselessness. Never mind one in, one out. Get to grips with this deranged absurdity.
If I knew that there was some fugitive terrorist and I decided to hide him in my blimmin' cellar, I would probably be prosecuted for aiding and abetting a criminal. I would probably go to jail for that. And yet our own Home Office is taking a fugitive terrorist and putting him up in a hotel.
It's just, as I say, it is literally unbelievable, and except it actually happened. And if this is not a wake-up call for Starmer to get to grips with his civil servants and to really get to grips with this migrant crisis, I don't know what is. If he does not react to this single story with something dramatic, something stronger than he's done so far, we are lost. We are lost. It is just breathtaking that this happened.
Well, he's not reacted. He's not going to react. He's going to pretend it doesn't exist. He's rather pleased that it probably got overshadowed by the state visit. But you and I, Kev, we don't let these things disappear down the cracks because we know how important they are. Kev and Alex right again. We're fighting the good fight and we will always continue to do so. Kev, I love you to bits. Thank you so much for coming on. It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, if that doesn't boil blood, I mean, like I said, if I was helping a fugitive terrorist hide out in my house, I would wind up in prison. The Home Office has just done that. And as a result, a woman got raped. I'm done. I'm done. What world do we live in? Right, after the break, I thought we were done with the whole what is a woman thing. The Supreme Court, for crying out loud, ruled on this. We know what science is. I thought this was done and dusted. I thought everyone had got the memo that science is still science, that facts are still facts, that a woman doesn't have a penis. Well, apparently, there are still some political leaders who don't seem to get that. We're going to be discussing that with the inimitable, incredible Sharon Davis, Olympic medalist swimmer. Of course, you know her. She has done so much fighting for women's rights. She joins us after the break.
We know from endless examples that women are often persuaded, cajoled into staying in abusive, physically, sexually abusive relationships by these courts. We know that they lose the custody of their children when the children reach a certain age. We know that they're not given the same financial standing and rights to inheritance. It really is an absolute regime that has no place in this country of ours.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Now, do you know, you can't win battles when you're on the right. You think you've won. You think that actually logic prevails. You think actually finally we've managed to get rid of some ghastly demonic ideology that had no place anyway in society, that shouldn't have even been allowed to take root. And yet, I don't know what it is about the left. They just, you know, they just continue, don't they? Let's have a... I'm talking about Ed Davey here. Like, everyone who listens to this show regularly knows that I just think Ed Davey is a beep. Actually, I don't think he's a beep beep. I think he's a moron, but a stronger version of that word. This is a man who, frankly, was a disgrace to democracy because during the general election campaign, he decided to surround himself by water by constantly being on a jet ski or doing boneheaded things in a Lido, sort of water aerobics and all of this, so nobody could ever get to him and ask him a question. I can't remember a single policy that came out of his mouth. I can't remember a single interview where this Egypt was held to account on anything. The man just sort of speaks in platitudes, wears woolly jumpers, does stupid TikTok videos, and all the women in Waitrose goes, isn't he lovely? Isn't he so nice? No, women, he's a danger to women. Well, it was really good, actually, to see the man, for the first time in a gazillion years, actually being cross-examined, and cross-examined by our very own Piers Morgan. Let's have a watch.
May 2023, you told LBC that women quite clearly can have a penis.
Well, actually, I didn't say that.
What did you say?
I was responding to a question. And what I actually said was that the vast majority of people identify with the same gender they had at birth. But there are a few who don't.
For the record, do you believe women can have a penis?
For over 20 years, we've had a Gender Recognition Act which has said that people who want to change their gender can do so.
But do you believe that women can have a penis?
I've explained that I think the vast majority of people have the same gender.
Not people, women. Can women have a penis?
So what I'm saying is...
Well, can they or not?
Listen, I'm answering
Why are you
my
squirming?
question. I'm not squirming at all.
But I don't think
I
don't believe that any women can have a penis. You seem to think that some can.
Well, I go back to what the law says. The law is really clear. It's one of the reasons why when the Supreme Court made its ruling, which some people didn't like, I said we accept that ruling.
So you now accept women can't have a penis?
I accept the ruling of the Supreme Court really clearly. I expect that...
So do you understand, notwithstanding what you feel about Trump, do you understand people watch this kind of exchange and they go, what is he talking about? Have you ever met a woman with a penis?
No. But
oh, there we go.
But
what does that...
I never know why people don't ask people like Ed Davey. If your wife was at the local swimming bath getting changed and a big hairy brute got out his wang in the middle of the changing rooms, how would you feel? Would you be worried about your wife? Why don't people ask those questions, Sharon? Because all these sort of softy lefties, we're nice, be kind and all of that, they don't seem to want to be kind to women, do they?
Alex, get a cup of tea in you, girl. Calm down. I love your passion. It is infuriating, isn't it? Particularly when at the end of that conversation, he said that they accept, you know, the Supreme Court ruling in April. Well, obviously they don't, because you were right. You know, the policy of the Lib Dem party is self-ID. It still is self-ID. And they're not telling people that vote Lib Dem that that's their case. So in other words, any man could rock up to a swimming pool that day and decide to identify and go in with little girls and get changed. It is not acceptable. We've got a situation here in Wiltshire where we've got a trans-identifying man, one of the councillors, only one out of the whole county council, and he wants every single toilet changed to a neutral toilet so that he can go in them, rather than changing one toilet, or, you know, putting a neutral sign on the disability toilets as well so that anyone can go in there, because obviously disability toilets, men and women go in there. But no, he wants every single toilet changed at the expense of, you know, the local councillor so that he can feel happy and isn't made to go in the men's toilet. It's crazy. We've got to get to a place where we understand that biological sex actually matters. I don't care what anyone wears. I don't care what they call themselves. I believe everyone should be allowed to do sport. But biological reality is reality. You know, sex is terribly important when it comes to statistics, when it comes to safeguarding, when it comes to sport. And one of the other things with the Lib Dems in particular, which is really worrying, even though we have that Supreme Court ruling and they say that they're accepting it, actually they're really not, because when they have figures for women on committees and panels, they're still allowing men who identify as women or non-binary to take those positions. And that is actually what the whole Supreme Court ruling was about, that the women, you know, for Scotland actually went to court to get that clarified so that women couldn't be pushed out of those positions. So he really is a bit of a man with a forked tongue, I'm afraid. And you're right, you have to get to the policies. And I worry terribly that people, you know, might want to go, oh, I'm not going to vote for reform because I feel that they're over here, and I'm not going to vote for the Conservatives because look what they did in the last election. I'm not going to vote for Labour because look at their mess. I'll just vote for Lib Dem. And they're not even checking what Lib Dem are standing for, and that's what's really, really important.
Oh, I know. That was their whole sort of structure, the whole, oh, don't vote for the other parties, vote for us because we're nice. And they didn't answer a single question. The man was constantly on a body of water.
I like the water bit. I mean, I'm happy doing the water. In the water bit, you know, I was there, right?
I know, right? Yeah, you should invite him over to an Olympic swimming pool and put him through his paces. But, you know, this is the thing. I'm glad you brought up the idea of the sort of gender-neutral toilets, because I've heard this from a transgender barrister where they've gone, well, actually, the best way of doing things is we can just make all toilets into cubicles and gender-neutral cubicles. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? I'll tell you what's wrong with that. Women do not want to be even in a cubicle next door to a man. It is embarrassing, but also men and women relieve themselves in different ways. Why can't women just have women's stuff when that has always been a treasured part of society where it's fundamentally respectful? A lot of men are equally embarrassed about having to share facilities with women. It is safer, it is cleaner, it is more hygienic, and for crying out loud, there are disabled toilets by law, so there is essentially a gender-neutral toilet by law. I don't understand why the odd trans person can't just use that facility.
Yeah, well, as you and I both know, it's not really about that. It's about forcing other people to verify their identity, isn't it? You know, it's not about the fact that they haven't got access to a toilet or they haven't got access to sport. You know, I can tell you categorically in sport, no one has ever been banned from sport. They've just been asked to compete in the category which fits what they actually are, you know, rather than getting an unfair advantage. So we have to be very careful about the motives behind why we're doing things, and we have to be able to challenge these people. And I know in Wiltshire in particular, people are frightened to challenge this particular individual, and that's not right. And it's the same on boards, it's the same in schools. I mean, you know, they tried very hard to put neutral toilets into schools, and what they found was that the girls were not going to the toilet all day. You know, because they were frightened to go to the toilet whilst boys were there, particularly young teenage girls, you know, and that ended up that they were having, you know, urinary tract infections and all sorts of things. So we have to understand the reality. We don't live in a perfect world, but we do know stats and we do know what happens. And so we have to be honest about these things. And yes, we can create third neutral spaces, but it shouldn't be at the sacrifice of, you know, women's dignity, privacy and safety, or opportunities when it comes to sport.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? The kindness and compassion is always going just one way, not in the other direction. Sharon, it's been a privilege and a delight to catch up with you. Hello there.
Hello.
All right, Mr. Collins.
I love that strap line, penis palaver.
God, that sounds like a meal I wouldn't want to be eating.
Exactly. I'll have some chips and penis palaver, please.
Yeah, palaver isn't one of the national dishes of Ghana, which is like,
you know,
I was talking about Ghana.
I know we
earlier,
talk
so
about
it's
this
in my
kind
mind.
of, you know, we're living in a world of nonsense, it's upside down, all the rest of it, but like Ed Davey, I mean, he's clearly